Ladies and gentlemen, the time is now 5:30, and we will call to order the special meeting of the Board of Trustees for December 1st, 2021. I want to explain a little difference tonight in our agenda and how we're going to operate tonight so that it's clear for everybody from the start. We're going to have a member of the district administration come up and speak to us, give the presentation. Board, I will ask you to hold your questions until she is through with her presentation before we start asking questions to her. After she is through with the presentation, we will have time for the board to ask questions. If you need to clarify or follow up on anything, then we will go into the public comment section, and I have 13 people signed up to speak. The rules will be the same as normal. You'll get 3 minutes to speak. That is for you to say whatever you want. After that, when all 13 of those have spoken, we will open the microphone to questions. And so if you want to come up and ask a question, and either the board or the administration will try to address your question as the best we can to work through that. So hopefully we kind of keep it smooth and get through everybody's questions tonight and do it in an appropriate fashion. So thank you for being here tonight. And at this time, I'm going to call up Ms. Spencer to speak to us on item agenda A, district presentation, A, YWPN long-term facility.
Good evening, President Murray, Superintendent Ramsey, members of the board. Tonight, we have a presentation regarding Young Women's Leadership Academy and a long-term facility plan. There we go. The first slide, we have a timeline of decision making. And just to run through that briefly, the Board of Trustees approved a memorandum of understanding with the Young Women's Preparatory Network on November 18th, 2018. At that time, it was made clear that the campus would open in portable buildings and remain there until such time an existing MISD facility could be repurposed. After months of planning and preparation, YWLA opened in August of 2019 with grades 6 and 7. In November of the same year, a general election was held that included a bond referendum that included plans to repurpose and renovate an existing facility for YWLA. Unfortunately, the bond was not successful. In August of 2020, 8th grade was added to YWLA with additional portables on site to accommodate the school's additional students, and almost immediately, MISD staff began planning for the addition of 9th grade in the 21-22 school year. In a special board meeting that was held here on March 29th, 2021, trustees discussed options for the continued expansion of YWLA. During that meeting, it was determined that we could delay any decision regarding facilities until the fall semester of 2021-22, and that in the interim, a demographic study would be conducted to determine if an existing MISD facility would be a viable option based on population forecasts. It was agreed that during this school year, the Young Women Leadership Academy would utilize a wing of Jones Elementary, and that 9th grade coursework would not require any facility renovations. Essentially, we gained some additional time to make the most informed decision. In September of this school year, the demographic study details were shared during a regular board meeting, and since that time, administration has evaluated the data to determine if any viable options exist that would allow the Young Women's Leadership Academy to transition to a permanent facility. The Facilities Committee met on November 2nd to discuss long-term facility options, and those options will be shared with you tonight as well as our stakeholders. Tonight's presentation, just to reiterate, is for discussion only, and trustees will be asked to take action in a subsequent meeting. So as discussed in March, there are 2 options to consider. 1, continue to purchase, lease additional customized portable buildings and create code-required parking for the 22-23 school year, or transition YWLA to an existing MISD facility and create the code-required parking necessary. With option 1, the image that is reflected on this screen is the plan that was developed and intended to be implemented in phases as a temporary facility solution. There are currently 4 customized portable buildings on site with 3 additional required for school expansion. And so on the right or left-hand side of the screen, my left, are the buildings that are in existence, and those that are squared with red dots is any future buildings and parking that would be required. On the next slide are costs associated with option 1. So in spring of 2021, quotes were provided for the 2 additional customized portables that would be necessary for expansion through 10th grade. There is a box on the screen as well indicated TBD or to be determined as an additional portable facility would be required for future 11th and 12th grade. We can make some assumptions that that portable would be a replication of the one for 9th and 10th grade, and that costs would be very similar, not taking into account inflation and such as that. So you see with the cafeteria building, the 9th and 10th grade classrooms, as well as the general contractor fees that also include the necessary required parking, the cost is approximately $3.8 million. And that does not include the cost for expansion of 11th and 12th grade. So, looking at brick and mortar options and facilities considered for option 2, our initial evaluation of campuses centered around 3 existing facilities. Jones Elementary, as it was the topic of discussion in the March meeting, Carver Center, because it was originally served as a high school campus, and Washington Elementary, because it is currently our most underutilized facility in the district. And the table details the data that was reviewed. So we looked at enrollment for each campus, the footprint, which is the acreage around each campus, building size, age, classroom square footage, and the reason that is important is because TEA standard for high school classrooms is 700 plus square feet, a minimum of 700 square feet. And for science labs, labs only, not classrooms plus science labs, but science labs is a minimum of 1,000 square feet. The current capacity of each campus based on enrollment, whether or not it has an attendance boundary. So with that, we were able to rule out Carver Center almost immediately due to its footprint. As you see, there's not enough land available on that campus. There's currently 6.4 acres. So there is not enough land area there to create the parking that would be required as we expand into a high school campus. Additionally, there are only 13 classrooms on that campus that are a minimum of 700 square feet. So let's focus on what the demographic study data told us as we begin to talk about Jones Elementary specifically. So because Jones Elementary is a neighborhood school with a defined attendance boundary, it was necessary to really look at that data. And I want to point you to the second line from the bottom where the yellow arrow is, where we're really looking at forecasted resident students. So not necessarily the students that are enrolled at the campus, but the students that live within the boundary. Because at any particular time, students who live within an attendance boundary could select to go to their home campus. So as you can see on this slide, the resident population is expected to increase slightly each year with an overall forecasted resident student population of approximately 95 students through school year 29-2030. That's difficult to say. School year 29-30. Also, on the next slide, equally important in looking at the demographic data is that as we look at our population projection as an overall district, that we are expected to see gradual growth over the next several school years through 2030, and that the elementary population is forecasted to exceed more than 17,000 students in grades PK through 6 by school year 2029-30. The 10 campuses that I've listed on the screen for you indicate those elementary campuses are essentially the top 10 that are forecasted to have the most residential growth within their area. And as you see, Jones Elementary rounds out that top 10 list. The graphic that I have created essentially are our current elementary attendance boundaries. And I've put yellow stars for each of those 10 campuses to signify where our greatest growth is. So if you were to divide Midland essentially in half from north to south, you would see that 7 of the 10 campuses with the greatest forecasted growth are located on the west side of Midland. So campuses such as Yarborough, Great House, and Fasken are currently experiencing rapid student growth that would require the board at some point to consider attendance boundaries. And when that occurs, campuses such as Jones Elementary, the boundaries for those campuses may have to be expanded to support the growth in the area. So for that reason, Jones Elementary has been ruled out as a viable long-term facility option. It's also important to note, although Jones does have 28 classrooms that exceed 700 square feet, there are no classroom spaces or lab spaces that exceed 1,000 square feet. So there would be required renovation, and for every science lab we would need to create to support high school instruction, we would lose 2 classrooms on that campus. In a meeting earlier this week, a community member asked me if Henderson had been considered as an option, because they remembered that being discussed in our March meeting as well. Because as we were talking about whether or not Jones was an option, we also talked about how Henderson has a lower enrollment and could potentially, their boundary could have been expanded to take additional students. I have put this on here to show you and remind you and refer back to the graphic. I've drawn the line down the middle. We did not consider Henderson as a viable option and really did not do an evaluation because, again, when you look at the growth on the west side of Midland, campuses such as Henderson may be needed when boundaries are redrawn. And as a preview, it's very likely in the near future that we will have to consider the boundary for Henderson Elementary as we look to relieve campuses such as Yarborough that I mentioned earlier. Continuing to take a look at the data, the demographic study not only provided information about projected growth, but also forecasted some decline in some areas as well. And I thought it was important to note that in this slide. So there are 3 of our neighborhood campuses, Rusk Elementary, Santa Rita Elementary, and South Elementary, that are forecasted to have enrollment decline over the next 10 years. But even though there is a decline, that decline is minimal. So less than 50 students on each campus. But because we are looking at possible facility or existing facility options, again, here's a map here just to show you the location of those campuses. But I wanted you to see that if we evaluated those 3 campuses, looking at those with enrollment declines, you see Rusk, Santa Rita, and South both sit on small acreage. So when you look at the necessary parking that would be required, those campuses are not viable options. You see South has less than 9 classrooms that are 700 square feet or greater, 0 labs. But more importantly, those campuses, specifically Santa Rita and South, are neighborhood campuses that have relatively strong enrollment, and that those buildings are being used. Their capacity is relatively full. So if you look at option 2 and you consider a brick and mortar recommendation for Young Women's Leadership Academy, the most viable existing option that exists would be Young Women's Leadership Academy at Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington is the most viable option for many reasons, including it is not a neighborhood school with a defined attendance boundary. And although reported previously in this presentation as having an enrollment of 347 students, when I looked at today's enrollment, it was down to 338, I believe. There were 300, excuse me. So there are 300 students which we will speak about in a minute, that would be need to be relocated. But the campus has 26 classroom spaces that exceed 700 square feet and 6 lab spaces that exceed 1,000 square feet. And it's currently the most underutilized facility in the district. So when you look at the rationale for YWLA at Booker T. Washington, schools supported by Young Women's Leadership Network provide a single-sex educational choice for predominantly low-income students who will be the first in their families to attend college. The percent of students, so on campuses who are now grades 6 through 12, the percent of their students who graduate from high school and are accepted into a college or a university is 100%, and 94% of those students do go on to attend college the year after high school, the year after they've graduated. And 54% of those students receive their college degree within 6 years. As we look at Washington, it's important to note that elementary students who reside near the Booker T. Washington facility live within the boundary of Bunch Elementary, and that campus is 0.7 miles from the Washington facility. I've also noted that the junior high boundary for the students who reside near the Booker T. Washington facility is Goddard Junior High. And I point this out mainly because there is not currently a junior high option south of Highway 80 for students who attend Midland ISD. So if trustees determined that Booker T. Washington was the most viable long-term option for the young women of Young Women's Leadership Academy, it would create a junior high option for the young ladies south of Highway 80 that could be within walking distance of their homes. When we look at this slide provides information regarding current district demographics and how YWLA and Washington STEM Academy compare. So you see district currently, African American population is 7.12%, Asian 2.51%, Hispanic 65%, white 22.63%, 2 or more, 2.31%. We do have an economically disadvantaged population of 50.38%, and our English language learners make up 15.32% of our student population. To align with their mission, YWLA will need to target their recruiting efforts to attract more women who are economically disadvantaged. The most important factor as we look to make a decision in the future is whether or not the young women of YWLA should transition to Booker T. Washington is the impact to the students that are currently attending Washington STEM Academy. This slide indicates the home campus of each student by their 22-23 grade level. So if they are in kindergarten now, this slide notes them being in first grade next year. So looking at 22-23 data. At the time the data was compiled, these numbers reflected 316 students that would potentially be affected by this transition. As of today, that number has decreased to 303. It's also important to note that there are currently 4 sections or 4 classrooms of life skills that are currently taught at Washington Elementary. And as we've been looking at campuses and evaluating campuses, one of the things that we've also discovered is that we have life skills suites across the district that are not being utilized as intended or as designed. And so students who are participating in life skills programming at Washington currently, regardless of the options selected, will be relocated or most likely relocated to a facility that is more conducive to the instruction that they receive and meeting the services that are outlined in their IEP. So when you take the 30 students who are receiving that instruction, this reduces the number of students who may potentially return to their home campus in the 22-23 school year to 271. This slide, although difficult to read if you are in your seat, essentially takes the enrollment from November 9th, so current enrollment for each of the elementary campuses, and adds the home campus students to their current enrollment. And so again, I wanted everyone to be able to see, we'll look at Travis just because that's the top line. There are 34 students currently attending Washington that live within Travis's attendance boundary, so those students would potentially be added to their enrollment, which would make the functional capacity versus potential enrollment at 108%. What I want to remind the board or remind trustees is that when we're looking at the capacity of our facilities, we're looking at the interior of the building only, and we're not taking into account any portable buildings that may be on site. So you see in the column to the far right, the number of portables that are on each campus. I did include the graphic or the chart that is on the right-hand side of the slide. Essentially takes a look at those campuses who now would potentially be at 90% capacity or greater. So I could show you what the actual impact was. So if you look at Travis again, and we see on the chart that it shows a capacity of 108%, this impact had a 3 percentage point increase. So that campus is already at 105% capacity on its interior. The greatest impact, as you see, to capacity is with Bunch Elementary, where you see a capacity of increase of 7 percentage points. So they are currently, this potentially could impact them where their capacity interior would be at 113%, but they do have 8 portables on site. As we know, Washington is a magnet program. It is a STEM academy, and so the district plans to continue STEM programming for the 22-23 school year and will expand to 2 sites. One site on the south side of Midland and one site on the west side of Midland. So in summary, facility options for YWLA include additional portable buildings at the current site where we are tonight, or transition to an existing MISD facility. The most viable existing facility option is Booker T. Washington because the facility has necessary classroom and lab space with minimal renovation required. The site has the land area necessary to create the parking for secondary students. It is not a zoned elementary school, and it is currently the most underutilized facility in Midland ISD. Should the facility transition to Young Women's Leadership Academy at Booker T. Washington, currently enrolled students will have the following academic options. They may elect to return to their home campus. They will receive priority to Young Women's Leadership Academy for current 5th and 6th grade young women. Priority will be given to San Jacinto Junior High for current 5th and 6th grade young men and women for any of those who would like to begin their junior high journey. And priority to elementary STEM academies will be given to all current kindergarten through 5th grade students. Or, as with any student within MISD, they may apply for a transfer to another MISD campus. Okay. Questions?
Board, do we have questions of Ms. Spencer? Mr. Davis?
On page 5 or slide, no. On the slide that indicates, you said that slide 14. Page 14, yeah, whatever. Page 14 on.
No, they're different.
Okay.
Brick and mortar options considered.
Yes, that's
Thank you.
that's the one. looking at the Washington column,
Yes.
utilizing the enrollment number of 347, the current capacity was at 49%, which was the least utilized campus in MISD, is that correct?
That is correct.
But that number's been revised down to 338.
Correct.
Do you know what the revised capacity number is?
I do not, but I can figure that when I
It'll
sit
be
down.
less than 49%.
It will be less than 49%.
All right. And then on you're on potential impact to capacity, which is page 21. Did I hear you correctly to say that your column entitled functional capacity versus potential enrollment, that functional capacity percentage is derived at by only utilizing the interior classrooms, if you will, of the bricks and mortar campus, and not the capacity furnished by the portables that are in the column?
Yes, sir, that is correct. Capacity is determined based on the building structure only, the interior of the facility.
And finally, on page 16, the brick and mortar recommendation. The recommendation is to relocate Young Women's Leadership Academy at Booker T. Washington, and that would be the name of that new campus, Young Women's Leadership Academy, Booker T. Washington.
So, yes, sir, Booker T. Washington, as I mentioned, is the most viable existing facility. Should we choose to transition Young Women's Leadership Academy to an existing facility, and the name would become Young Women's Leadership Academy at Booker T. Washington.
Thank you, that's all I have.
I have a question.
Mr. Marcus?
For one, I appreciate page 21. Years ago, I asked for that clarification. I'm glad that we're so clear it that way. It's important for our public to know that which campuses have portable buildings. And prior to me being on the board, I think it was considered holistically the whole number with the portable classrooms. So that's been real important for me, for the community to know that. I see the status of what each campus or elementary is in with our portable buildings. I'll ask you the question, but that's on this. But is our Young Women's Leadership Network, I'm assuming that there's been a conversation and that conversation has gone well with the potential transition?
Yes, sir. We have met with leadership from the preparatory network as well as campus leadership as well. Not only regarding the transition, but it was important as we considered the facility to discuss the name. And we made sure that that was an approvable option for the preparatory network, and they are 100% on board with the name Young Women's Leadership Academy at Booker T. Washington.
In providing the I believe it's 13 acres for the facility. That's to include all projected growth for the network, the Young Women's Leadership Network.
So and we'll go back to a slide that contains the data for Washington, if you don't mind. Yes, so the entire site is 13 acres, which does include the existing facility. But as we know, the capacity of that building with the anticipated enrollment of Young Women's Leadership Academy built out, which is approximately 100 students per grade level. I believe when you look at campuses within the network that are 6 through 12, the enrollment seems to be between 500 and 550 and 600 students. The existing facility should more than accommodate that campus or that program long-term without any additions to the building. But should it not, there would remain land available if we needed to add on to the facility at any point, or land available if we needed to bring in portables at any point, including and keeping in mind that that land also will now have parking as well. So the 13 acres more than accommodates what is currently needed, and although not anticipated, but if the need presented itself, the ability to expand with renovation or with portable buildings.
Thank you. Has there been any discussion when, there's some open land towards the east side of the current campus? And I could be wrong about that, but I believe there's open land, or a portion of it is open out there. Is there any conversation, or we have any conversation with the city, or as to what potentially might go out there?
No, sir, we have not at this point.
That's all I have.
Okay, I want to clarify, I did math real quick, so you didn't have to sit down. I think the capacity would be 708 students, so that would be roughly 47.7 or 48%, so it would drop a percentage point. And I think that helps answer your question, because you said YWLA would roughly have 600 students. This would hold 708 without any build on. So the other thing I wanted to ask, well, let's clarify, because a comment you made to answer Mr. Marquez, you said we talked to the administration at YWLA and the principal and staff. Tell me, because I think it's important for this group and the people that are going to hear this meeting to understand who those employees work for.
So the employees at this campus, including the leadership for Young Women's Leadership Academy, are Midland ISD employees, and the students who attend school here are Midland ISD students.
Thank you. So even all the way up to the principal are our employees.
Yes, sir.
These are not outside students, and so we can't give them a tag that you're a private school student. You are MISD.
Correct.
As Dr. Ramsey says to us all the time.
Yes,
You are
sir.
MISD. Okay, thank you. The one question, and I'm gonna partially answer it myself because I've already asked about this on page 19, because I think part of the discussion we were moving, looking at Washington as part of an answer was the EcoDis number that kind of threw me off, because 26.3. I know I had this conversation with Dr. Seibert a year and a half ago, and that number was closer to 40%, a little over 40% at that time. And so I sought clarification as to why we're so low, because you made the comment, they're going to need to recruit to attract more EcoDis to meet their policy. And that, I think that's true. And I think part of that is they weren't able to go out into classrooms last year in school buildings and recruit students because of the fact that we had COVID and we didn't send a whole lot of extra people into our campus.
I believe that's true, that their recruitment efforts were virtual.
And the second part of that, and I don't know if this affects a big number, but I know at the first of this year, the board received an email, I think all of us received it, was, and we talked about it, was that we had a busing issue because we quit going to each campus and picking up students, and now there's kind of a central point where you walk to and then shuttled across the
I think that's a very valid point that you bring up. I received some emails at the beginning of the school year as well, particularly from families who live on the south side whose daughters were needing to catch the bus from Bunch Elementary. And the bus picks up from Bunch Elementary at approximately 7 a.m., give or take a few minutes, for a campus that starts at 8:40. And so they're concerned because they were having to get to work and get other children either to daycare or to school, was that their young daughters were walking to school as early as, or walking to Bunch as early as 6:30 in the morning in order to catch that bus, and they were concerned for their safety. And so certainly when you think about situations and scenarios such as that, there are barriers that exist for young women on the south side of Midland. to access a choice program on the north or west side.
And one more thing, I'm gonna have you go back, because I didn't follow up with this. You said a while ago that YWLA, they are our employees, they are our students. The YWLA network, is that a charter network?
No. So the young women, and I believe they have a representative here tonight who can speak more to that. But the preparatory network is a support system essentially for schools that are, there's now 10 schools across the state of Texas, and they partner with school districts to create these single gender schools within the school district. Until recently, it's my understanding that they did not operate even under 1882 partnerships, but now they are beginning to see more of that, and essentially that 1882 partnerships bring additional funding into the district to support the campus.
In our special circumstance, we asked them to be 1882.
We
That was
did,
our
that's my
plan.
understanding, yes.
Okay. Board, any other questions?
I have a few.
Ms. Joyner?
First of all, thank you for all the hard work. I know that it felt like there was no easy or right decision along the pathway that has led us here. I don't think anybody wants to close an elementary school, and I don't think anyone wants young women's leadership to have to stay here. So with that said, thank you for going through all of our viable options. So when we look at page 21, the potential impact to capacity, and look at Bunch specifically, we are assuming, I guess, that a rezoning will be necessary in order for us to be able to absorb that kind of influx should those children decide all to go to their home campus, or would that not be necessary right away?
It would not be necessary right away. We will, in full transparency, we will be looking at minimal reboundaries, redrawing of boundaries for next school year, but not in relation to the potential of this. It is in relation to the exceptional growth that we are seeing, particularly on the northwest side of Midland.
Okay, and then you and I had a conversation about possibly carving out seats at Pease for some of the students that might be wanting to relocate but stay within a magnet. And Pease is generally close to geographically similar to where we are with Washington. Do you know if there's been any more research or thought given to what that would look like? Because I know that they look like they're at 70%
Right,
capacity.
so I think that is important to point out. They're currently at 70% capacity. They do have a large number of seats remaining, and students who are currently attending the Washington STEM program, regardless of the decision that is made, certainly have the option to apply beginning December 7th to attend Pease.
But they would have to go through the application process. We wouldn't be able to just, I'm suggesting, or thinking out loud, not suggesting, but saying, one idea or possibility would be, instead of saying you have to apply to Pease, if that's your preference, we're gonna guarantee you X number of seats as essentially a peace offering, knowing that we've displaced, I know it's a smallish number, but those kids all have friends.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. And when you look at the in summary slide and item number 3, it certainly is something that could be added to that list, that where students who apply to Pease could be given priority based on the number of seats available.
Right, that would be something I would like to pursue, or because it's still a school of choice. It's relatively close to where we are now, and I know that parents would also like to know ahead of time that they're gonna have several options.
Sure, that's fair.
The last question I have was, I know you alluded to it, and I assume it's just because no decisions have been made, because it all hinges on this if we decide to move forward, but when you talked about the STEM academies, that means that it would not necessarily make them magnets, but they would have the STEM educational pathway that we would be installing, or would that make them magnets?
No, so
explain
correct.
how that would,
Correct. They would maintain their existence as a neighborhood school. So students who reside within that boundary would obviously have first seat available, but any remaining seats would be available for application as part of the STEM program. So it is about the academic program, science, technology, engineering, and math. And even though I said it remains a neighborhood school, that programming is school-wide. So for the neighborhood schools, and it becomes essentially a school of choice, just as I, yeah.
so
just a
it's
school of
not a
choice.
magnet essentially, but it would be a possibility in the applied Midland process for parents to decide that STEM, we are not eliminating our STEM options to the district
Right.
audience as a whole.
So just as with any other campus currently, so Milam, for example, in our upper grades, it's an attendance boundary. So students apply for the available seats. And so that was exactly how that would work for our STEM academies. Students throughout the district would have the opportunity to apply for the available seats.
What would be the viability of doing essentially the same process or possibility of carving out a certain number of seats for specifically for Washington students at the two STEM academies?
So I think essentially we're doing that because those students will be given priority in year one. So,
Okay.
so going in, they will get priority to either of those programs essentially because they attended the STEM Academy at
And that
Washington.
was my hope,
Yes.
is that even though we haven't determined which campuses those two would be, but that we would give options to parents, so if we possibility of adding peace in that mix as well, because of the geography, now you've really hopefully given parents better options than just saying, we're sending you back to where you're zoned to.
Exactly,
Because they chose Washington for a reason.
exactly.
Okay, that's it for me.
Mr. Trischetti?
Thank you for all the work you put into the data there. I don't need it, but, so just full disclosure, you know, but for the public, I'm a Washington parent. 3 of my 5 went there. My youngest is still there in second. And so, you know, there's a lot to parse here, both as a trustee and as a parent. One question I have in regards to the demographic study, coupled with the census, you mentioned just briefly that there's going to be minor modifications made for the coming school year, for next school year, to adjust some of that. But if we look at that and see all of these overcapacity, why aren't we taking the census data and the demographic data and redrawing the lines and giving the relief to those that are overcapacity and those that are underutilized, utilizing them better, just as for the district as an element, for the
Yeah,
elementary.
so if that is the will of the board, absolutely, we can take a look at what that would do district-wide. What we're trying to do, or what we will be proposing that we do, and making a recommendation to the board, is that we relieve campuses who are experiencing the greatest capacity problems and have the greatest anticipated or forecasted growth, and have surrounding schools that can absorb those students as
I
well.
know we have a lot of public comments, so I just want to make sure that we're clear, that the public's clear. This is option 2. If for whatever reason, the board doesn't take action, the motion, whatever, not tonight, but in the future, option 1, which you showed us first, which is the addition, staying here, the addition of portables, all of that, to the tune of $3 million for next year, is contractually obligated. We have to do something about YWR.
We have to make a decision, yes, which is why now you have the 2 before you, portables for an existing MISD facility. And the reason a decision is imminent and important is because of the planning that would be required in the second semester in order to ensure that the buildings or the facilities are ready for the start of the 22-23 school year. And even more important with option 1 is that we will need an additional transformer on site to ensure that electricity is available for the portable buildings, and the lead time on those is about 6 months. So we need to get on the list to make sure that the transformer would be on site for electrical purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Marquez.
So I just want to recap a little bit about Young Women's Leadership Academy. And, I remember when we took the decision to bring this program to Midland. I can remember some of the emails that I received. I can't share every one of them, but I can remember there was some controversy about bringing the program here. And I can remember there was obviously all this. It seems like there was a lot more again than before. So I want to recap because the program's been a very successful program for Midland ISD. And I think as a community, I think we should be a shining star in the state of Texas to exemplify leadership for women in this community. We as a Board of Trustees have elected a woman to lead this district. And in my opinion, she's doing a great job. I applaud the Young Women's Leadership Academy for the hardships that have been withstood so far to get to this point, because it hasn't been easy. And I remember that from when we made the decision. I knew it was not going to be easy. But I really applaud everybody that's been involved to bring the program to where it is today. So to our community, please take that into consideration that it's been so much hard work to get to the point we are today. So with all decision-making process, you know, there's a for and the against. And like I said, back then, some of the conversations I had, privately and via email, there was opposition and for and against. So with that said, I just want to applaud the efforts by the board back then and to continue to support this Young Women's Leadership Academy. Thank you.
The green light. Listen, so thank you again. I want to let you know how much we appreciate the work that we do this, and I know it consumed part of your Thanksgiving break to be prepared for us today, so we appreciate that. At this time, group, we're going to move into the public comment session, and I think I said we had 13 people. You are going to be given 3 minutes as standard to speak and go through your what you want to say to the board, and then remember after that is when we will start. We will open the mic just for questions. So if you have a question, that time will be to ask a specific question, not to come up and express a point, but to ask questions. So with that being said, the first speaker I had sign up tonight in front of me is Carrie McNeil. Ms. McNeil, welcome to the podium, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm going through this and I'm watching all the fancy displays and I'm looking at all this stuff. And I'm not against the Young Women's Leadership Academy. I think it's probably a great program. I'm a little salty about it because I feel like our little boys are just as important. So if we're going to do something like this, we probably should consider doing something for our men, because they're going to grow up to be dads, fathers, and things, whatever. But I feel like that you guys did this to us again. Y'all went out and y'all brought in an academy charter, whatever, partnered up, was just really sure this bond was going to pass and y'all were going to go Mass J. Well, it didn't. So now we're to the point now where we have to figure out where are we going to put these kids, because y'all have contractually promised these people a program, right? So now we're here. Well, I'm a realtor, and I'm going to tell you right now, all of our growth is north, northwest. We're going 349, we're going that way. We have to redo these balances. We have, because it's going to continue to keep pushing that way as far as attendance. So to me, the easiest solution would be leave them alone, leave them here in a campus because it's not our fault, and leave that poor little school alone. When you look at the demographics, predominantly the Young Women's Leadership Academy, whether it's COVID or not, is 42.81% white and Hispanic. That's not fair either. And I don't care if we didn't recruit or we didn't do whatever. Everybody wants to have a neighborhood school. Like, leave it, put them here. You know, and even then, because we like to spend money, we're looking at what, 3.9, 3.7 estimated without the last TBD box once again, we're spending millions on facilities, all over the place. We've done it with the apartments, the golf courses, the brand, the name change. Once again, now we're dumping money somewhere. I just don't think it's the community's fault. So that's my thing. I don't think we should change Washington. I think we need to leave that campus the way it's at. I think we need to figure out what we're gonna do for our boys and leave them here. Thank you.
Then we go
Mr.
back.
Murray, if I could say something about the boys, and I've got a lot of comments about that. And I'd like to give you a little bit of an explanation. Young Women's Leadership Academy, when they came to us, they had a proven track record of success. They had a proven playbook that they had used on other campuses. I think 4 or 5 campuses in the state of Texas at that time. And so they said, we're going to share that playbook with you, the programming that we do with you, and partner with you. There is not another in Texas program for boys that has that kind of track record. If there is, then we would welcome the opportunity, but there's not. If there is one that comes and develops a track record of success, we would welcome the opportunity. But we've got our hands full fixing what we got, as opposed to starting a new, homegrown, on our own boys academy. So we haven't taken on that project yet, but that's why we welcome the opportunity to partner with a proven Young Women's Leadership Academy and do not have a similar opportunity for boys at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. For record-keeping purposes, we did start public forum at 6:18. I'll get in trouble if I don't record that. The next person to speak that signed up tonight for YWPN is Shirley Howard. I'm okay. Okay. The next person would be Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, thank you for being here tonight. It's not often we hear from you from the other side of the microphone.
My name is James Fuller, 1324 East Pine. Board and President, Superintendent Ramsey. I just have 1 or 2 points to make. Communications is a significant part of any community's vital function. And one thing that I am sharing with you is the expressed concern of the COVID interveners having not been a part of the integral conversation that relates to this change that's about to take place. Now, fortunately, the presentation did dispel the rumors that's been floating around the community relative to the fact that the name Washington, Booker T. Washington, would be eliminated given this change that's about to take place. Well, I'm glad to hear and see that it's not going to be eliminated. But I have concerns about where those students who are part of the enrollment in Washington are going to be displaced. How, if at all, are we going to make an initiative, a significant initiative, to include them, with the young ladies first, in the Young Women's Academy? That needs some clarification. And it needs some clarification to the point that we deliberately address the issue of black and brown young women who are part of the South community and certainly deserve a shot at participating in this process. I have another question, but I'll wait until the question section. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. The next speaker we have for YWPN Midland is Berta Bogerson. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Murray, Dr. Ramsey, Board of Trustees. I'm Berta Fogerson. I'm the Chief Academic and Accountability Officer for the Young Women's Preparatory Network. And first of all, let me say that I certainly understand the heavy charge that you're faced with and respect the roles that you play as Board of Trustees in making a decision about your community and trying to decide what is best for everyone that's concerned here. My purpose in coming before you this evening is to, first of all, reaffirm YWPN's position as a collaborative partner with Midland ISD. That's how we came to the table from the onset, wanting to enhance education for young women in Midland, and that's the role that we want to continue to pursue. YWPN is dedicated to honoring what we consider to be an evergreen agreement with the district to support all-girl public education for the young women in Midland ISD. Some things that I do want to be able to address. First of all, Young Women's Preparatory Network is not a charter operator. Thank you, Mr. Murray, for validating that for us. We are a nonprofit organization, and we have a 20-year record of partnering with public school districts to establish all-girl public schools. Our work has evolved over these 20 years, and we are the largest network of public all-girl schools in the nation, with over 5,100 girls enrolled in 10 districts throughout the state. We are dedicated to serving ethnically and socially economically diverse young women, with over 65% of our most recent graduates being first generation to attend college, 60% of our student enrollment deriving from low-income households, and 80% of our young women that we serve being young women of color. And certainly being able to have a campus that's located in a part of Midland that will help us to provide this kind of education to those underrepresented populations of young women would certainly be an ideal for our goal and our work. Our model is framed around 3 pillars. We promote college readiness, leadership development, and health and wellness. And this work has resulted in over 2,600 alumni, 100% graduation rate, 100% acceptance to a 4-year university, and over $360 million in merit-based and need-based scholarships being awarded to our girls. And we would love to include Midland statistics amongst those. We're proud to be a partner with Midland ISD. This school has achieved some impressive milestones, and we know that as a district you've upheld what you committed to upholding in providing us a place to exist. We would love to have a permanent home. That would be great, but we trust in you and in this process to determine when that will happen and where that will be. Again, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Young Women's Preparatory Network and to tell you that we're here for the long haul. We want to support the young women of Midland, and we want to continue to enhance those educational opportunities for them. Thank you very much.
One quick question that might overlay into some of the public comment. That's the only reason I interject. We didn't discuss the teachers at Washington, and I just wanted, I know the answer, but for the community to talk about that piece, that how we've proceeded.
Yes, Trustee Joyner, thank you. We've had that discussion, so we prepared for that question this evening, and with almost 400 teachers through attrition each and every year, we definitely accommodate our teachers, especially all employees, as well as our child nutrition workers and our custodians as well, office staff. We have the ability to accommodate all of those teachers and to give them preference through an internal transfer process. And so we've been very successful with that process with other changes and transitions through the years, and so we're prepared to make that change as well.
So just to be clear, if you work at Washington campus, we expect you to be able to retain your position, and that we will have room for you within the district, and you'll be given priority in terms of where you end up. Is that correct?
Yes, just to provide a little bit more clarification, all contract teachers, of course, we will give definitely preference to. If we have some teachers that are not fully contract or not fully certified, then we will have to try to work through our process and through the exemption process to see where they might be able to find a position. But as far as contract teachers with the school district and our employees that fit in with us, they definitely get preference, and we make sure they're taken care of.
And you said there's how many employees at the campus?
At the campus, I believe there are about 36, is what I understand. I remember classroom teachers there, and so.
But like janitorial staff, everybody,
Yes.
how
Yes.
Do you know?
Probably 50, I would say.
We're talking about 50, okay, people, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. The next speaker we have signed up is Reagan Hinojosa. Welcome.
This situation with Young Women's brings to memory an almost identical situation that I as a parent was involved with while my daughter attended the UTPB STEM Academy. At that time, the university had promised our students a brick and mortar facility after 4 years and the retirement, and after 4 years and the retirement of the university president, that promise appeared to be farther and farther down the road of being a promise fulfilled. This would be Idea School's first introduction to the Permian Basin, and it was wholly rejected by the parents and the staff, mostly because Idea Schools would not be a STEM school, and in fairness to Idea Schools, the university did a poor job of having public outreach to the parents and community, which y'all are doing a much better job than what they did. These students and parents deserve a brick and mortar facility because that's what they were promised and it's the ideal environment for our students. Now on the other side, I also have a deep connection with the neighborhoods around Washington, Carver, Travis, and Legacy Freshman. I was raised by the tank farm and the livestock auction that exists behind the MISD FFA facility, where I raise cows and goats, and is literally down the road from Washington. I grew up in the neighborhoods around the schools like Washington, spending the night at friends' houses, playing basketball and doing the football on the road in the streets. So I see the other side as well. The concern of losing another community hub in this area of town with little advocacy. And I think about the hundreds and perhaps thousands of students that have gone to Carver in the top 10% of their class, high school classes, and they go on to achieve a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a law degree, or medical doctorate. How many have been well served by that area of town and have achieved academic success while that side of town and that neighborhood continue to be overlooked? All I ask is that you try to achieve a balance. The reason I chose to accept the position on the IDEA Permian Basin Advisory Board was because I wanted to make sure that the promises would be kept and the neighborhood students would be first in line at that school, because there's three options: revoke the contract without cause and face litigation, allow the school to fail, and revoke the contract. And I cannot see myself hoping the school will fail, so I decided to choose to be on the advisory board, make sure our schools achieve academic success. I recommend, if you move forward with this plan, a revised contract agreement with the Women's Academy to include an advisory board for this network with at least 2 permanent seats from members of the neighborhood. Neighborhood children be first in line to enter new grades and fill enrollment gaps if children move out of the school. I also recommend a permanent outreach program to foster and maintain a relationship with the neighborhood that will ensure that YWLA will be a hub that will improve advocacy for the surrounding neighborhood, and that it will live up to its name as a leadership academy.
Thank you, Reagan. Some very good points. The next speaker is Sylvester Canty. Welcome, Mr. Canty.
Thank you. My name is Sylvester Cantu. I live at 143 Thorn Ridge, right across the street. I'm in favor of continuing, as has been recommended, a neighborhood school, so that throws out part of my comments. So I'm coming from a different angle. As I said, I live across the street. I first I had heard about this concept, but then when I first saw where it was happening, the ground was being broken. Well, what's going on? Well, you know, I found out from kids, you know, that what was going to be happening. So I expressed my objection, not only about the process of notification and learning of what was going to be happening in my neighborhood, where I live, to the administration, and also my objection to having such a facility. I think if you lived across from me, I leave you with those thoughts. No. So we come down to the location. No, I don't want this location for this facility here. And I certainly don't want it expanded. It is not an ideal location for, I deem it as a commercial activity. It's not a neighborhood school. And that's what this location was. You know, put it on the perimeter. Unfortunately, you know, the choices that have been presented, Washington has literally 3 sites of little neighborhood intrusion. Because you got the park, you got the east side that has almost no development. And then the south side, you got, you know, frontage by a major street, and all the frontage is on the side. So you have very little, or not as much intrusion as you do have here. If you keep it here as it is, well, that would be something, but you're looking for expansion. There's no room for expansion. And then where are you gonna have outdoor activity? So that's my input, that you would not consider expanding, and as noted, using more of our public dollars for that purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Cantu. The next speaker is Matt Galindo. Matt, welcome to the podium.
Thank you. First, I want to say that I'm not opposed to the Young Women's Leadership Academy. I think it's a great program. I don't believe that it should be taken over a neighborhood school. What I'd like to do is have a very uncomfortable conversation of why is it that the schools on the south and east side of town are the ones that have to get taken over. We have been saying this forever for the last 3 years that I have been involved with in my ISD. You all know that I have addressed y'all, and it's the exact same question that I've been asking. Why is it? And let's make this very clear that our children are not dumb, they are not ignorant, they are not stupid, but they are deserving of an education, of a shot like everyone else. Why is it that our babies have to get moved out to Daysawala, to Bunch, to South, to Travis, to the schools that we know are already struggling, that have struggled in the past? This is Crockett all over again, Mr. Murray. How many more times are we going to kick our babies out? And it might not seem that much to y'all right now, but it's because it's not your reality. And I'm not saying that it is that it's wrong, that you have to comply with the agreement. I understand that. But you're really going to kick our babies out of another campus and send them off not knowing what's going to happen to them? What do we tell our babies? What do we tell my niece that's sitting right here? What do I tell her? Sorry, Mama. That's for somebody else. Who, by the way, a person that sits on the facility committee said that they were deserving of that campus. These babies aren't deserving of that campus?
Thank you.
Come on. What more do we have to do to prove that our children deserve the exact same as every other child? I'm not saying don't give the Young Women Leadership Academy a place. Just don't give them another neighborhood school. How many more schools are you going to hand over that belong to us? This is the exact same fight, and this is the uncomfortable conversation. The exact same fight that black and brown folks have been fighting in Midland for years. And here in 2021, we continue to fight that same fight.
That's right. That's right.
And what? Now we're just going to have to sit back and hand it over? No. These young ladies deserve a campus. Just not ours, not in our neighborhood. Let us have that. Let us give our babies the education that they deserve. Because our kids matter too. This board has said, all students are first. We are in my ISD. I disagree. Some students are first, and some are in my ISD, but not all.
Thank you, Mr. Galindo. I will remind you, and I know you know already, that Washington is not a neighborhood school at this time, and so it doesn't have a neighborhood group. But, okay, so I just want to make sure we're aware of that. The next speaker we have is Mr. Stephen Robertson.
Welcome. Superintendent, trustees, my name is Stephen Robertson. and I have a daughter that attends Washington STEM Academy. I'm fortunate to know many of you on the Board of Trustees. I have great respect for each of you. You have put yourselves into public and vulnerable positions as leaders to do a job that receives very little praise and a tremendous amount of complaint. Our community truly needs folks to step up and step forward and say, it is I am here, I am ready to work. But we also need you to be leaders who will fight to the bitter end, not to pick winners and losers among the community's children. You are charged with doing what is best for the education of our children, all of our children, not just the ones you feel more committed to by contract or obligation. You are charged with doing what is best for the education of our children, no matter their background or circumstances. It is an incredibly honorable and noble task you have agreed to undertake. It is also an incredibly challenging and complicated task. I thank each of you for your willingness to take on this role. However, tonight it sounds like you are very much picking winners and losers among our children. In a generation of children already hammered by more challenges and setbacks than probably any generation since the children of the Great Depression, you are considering delivering more hardship and setback to a specific group, namely those children attending Washington STEM Academy. I'm not trying to argue whether you can or can't make this action. Instead, I'm challenging you to make absolutely sure before you do that it's what's best for the children of this community, and specifically, not just the children at YWLA, but also for the children at Washington, that will bear the brunt of this decision. If you truly believe that option 2 and kicking the kids out of Washington, causing another huge disruption to their education and development, is your choice, then I think each of you should sit down one-on-one with the children you are displacing and explain to them why they aren't important to you, why their education and stability means less to you than someone else's. That's what the parents of children at Washington STEM Academy will have to do. That's what I will have to do with my daughter. Our children will be learning one of life's most unavoidable lessons. When life gets hard, some leaders make sacrifices of those people they're supposed to be leading instead of for those people. I've heard many reasons why the administration believes the students at Washington are the best to sacrifice, and in those reasons, I fear a lot of adult failure. Why are our kids being punished for those failures? One last thing. You are not making a business decision here. Running a public school district is not running a business. If it were, you shouldn't be receiving public funds to establish programs like in-district charters or STEM academies that in turn you give up on. The decision you will be making is a decision that needs to be made by government because it should take into consideration the full public's best interest, something a private entity can't do. If you decide to shut down Washington and force those children to go to other schools, you will tremendously impact the 300+ lives of the children there. And I greatly appreciate the efforts you make and hope you take them into consideration, not just the women at Young Women's Leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. The next speaker is Gary C. Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Christy Savage. Welcome, Ms. Savage.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to say that I agree with everything that you've said, and I don't want us as a group to be on different sides of this. We're all in this together. We all want what's best for kids. But what has happened is there has been some mistakes made, and there now has to be something done. And unfortunately, somewhere something has to give. And I hate that for any student. My hope for the first person that spoke, my hope is that we do have a boys option one day. And I hope that every student would have the same options and get a wonderful education. I've been teaching for 23 years. All of those have been at MISD. I'm very loyal to the district. I have a great love and passion for all MISD students. I started out at Legacy, and then I moved to Bunch Early Childhood Center in 2009. I absolutely loved it, loved my students. Those were my babies. I had no plans to leave and then we learned that it was going to be closed down. And so I've experienced both sides of exactly why we're here. So in 2012, as you know, we shut down both of our early childhood centers. Those students were placed on campuses, and we as teachers were placed on the transfer list. I ended up at Travis, and it was just like at Bunch, it was a wonderful experience. Loved it. I was only there for one semester before I was asked to move to Washington. I currently teach at YWLA. That's, I guess, something that's important too to know. I was at Washington for 8 wonderful years. I loved and still love that school. I love that community. In my time at Washington, we did go through some adversity. We went through a name change. We went through renovations. We went through changes in administration. And we went through changes in the magnet program. Those are some of the things that have made Washington amazing. But it has changed. Not that it's not amazing, but it has. That's, I believe, some of the reasons why the population is down in that school now. Some of that adversity and some of those changes. I taught some amazing students at Washington that I still keep in touch with, and they just amazing people. But the Young Women's Network has core values of college readiness, responsible leadership, and wellness life skills, and that's what we should want from every school in our community. And I feel lucky to have the opportunity that I provide at YWLA, and I can promise you this, YWLA will change the lives of many young women in Midland, and all MISD students deserve a stable, secure, and safe environment for learning. And I just don't want to see us divide on this. I think we're all in it together. And we just, we need to figure out a solution.
Our next speaker is Arrington Morris, and she is a YWLA student. Welcome, Ms. Morris.
Hello. Hello, my name is Arrington Morris. I'm an 8th grade student at YWLA, and I've gone here since 6th grade. The elementary school that I went to was Washington STEM Academy. I'm secretary of student council, and I'm also a part of Run Club, where I recently got my second marathon, which is 52.4 miles. We have to use the Jones/YWLA field for that. And while every other school has a track, but we don't. I have participated in intramurals such as volleyball and basketball, and we also have to use Jones Gym for that. The reason that we need a building is because we want what's best for our students. If we are going to have 6th through 10th grade next year, we would not be able to fit in the 4 buildings in Summer Jones. We have the materials of every other junior high school except for a building. The best part about YWLA is the teachers at this school are the best of the best. They care for each and every one of the students and what's best for them. You can always go to them with what you need. We are excited about the options that were presented tonight and can't wait to see what the future of YWLA holds. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. The next one is also a YWLA student, and that's Astrid Acosta. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Astrid Acosta. I'm in 9th grade, and I come from South Elementary. I've been in YWLA since it opened, and I really enjoy it. Hola, buenas tardes. Me llamo Astrid Acosta y estoy en el 9º grado y vengo de South Elementary. He estado en YWLA desde que abrieron por primera vez y me la he pasado increíble. I'm the representative in the student council, and I'm also the president of the Interact Club. It's a club in which we do community service events like Keep New and Beautiful. And we also do fundraisers and donate the money to local charities. Soy la representante del Student Council y también soy la presidenta de Interact Club. Es un club en el que participamos en eventos comunitarios como Midland ISD, en el que limpias una área de Midland. También hemos recaudado fondos y donado dinero a organizaciones beneficias locales. I like how dedicated the teachers are here and how they make the classes interesting and get us more involved in the learning process. I also like how you can rely on all the teachers to talk to them if there's something wrong or if you're simply having a bad day. Also the fact that the girls here are really nice and they support me no matter what. Lo que me gusta de esta escuela es que los maestros hacen las clases interesantes y tratan de incluirnos en el proceso educacional. También me encanta cómo puedes confiar en los maestros para hablarles de tu día o si simplemente te estás sintiendo mal. Y no solo los maestros son increíbles, sino también los estudiantes que estudian aquí. Las niñas son muy amables y te dan tu apoyo incondicional. I think that having a permanent campus would be good for us because it would help us with the space. We will soon run out of it, especially with the new girls that are joining us next year. This school has a lot of performance-based classes, like choir and orchestra, and it's hard for us to perform whenever we have a concert. We either have to rent a stage like Bowie or perform in Jones Elementary's gym. Having our own building and campus would make us feel more comfortable and more like a family. It would also be much safer than having to walk to a whole new building just to attend class. Thank you for your time and consideration for the future of the home of YWLA. Gracias por su tiempo y consideración para el próximo hogar de YWLA.
Thank you, Mr. Coach. That was awesome. The next speaker, and I believe the last speaker, is Jennifer McDuffie.
No, sir, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That will conclude our public comment, and now we will open the floor to questions, and if you have a question of the board or the administration, we will just do it one at a time, so if you'll just come to the microphone, we will operate in that direction.
So why aren't we utilizing the golf course? Isn't there a land that's just sitting there?
The golf course was purchased for a future high school site whenever this community wants to build a future high school. Probably to replace Midland High, but it doesn't have to be Midland High, but that's the most likely candidate.
So why couldn't it be?
The golf course was up for sale and was going to be purchased by someone. And because, as was noted by, I think, Ms. McNeil, our growth is coming from the north, northwest 349 corridor, and the west. And so the idea was that, you know, if you need approximately, as recommended, 80 acres to build a high school campus, especially 6A size, you needed 100 acres. And we wanted, there's not another 100 acres located inside the loop in the northwest part of town that was available for a future high school site. And so the board, thinking long-term, whether it be that bond issue that failed or beyond, down the road, felt like that was a good long-term purchase for MISD because we would have a high school located in the northwest part of town to serve that growth. We'd have the existing legacy campus kind of north central, if you will. And then we had already, without any controversy, years before purchased a future high school site south of Grande Stadium. Again, thinking that would be a long-term good purchase. We made a purchase from the Scarboroughs in which they promised in the deed they gave to us not to develop that property on the surface for oil and gas development. And so that's the long-term plan. And whenever this committee wants to utilize those sites for those purposes, we'll be ready to go.
Okay, so nobody considered a short-term plan when you guys opened up this school? Was there a short-term plan so we wouldn't have to kick it out? Our kids, because I understand you said that's not a neighborhood school. That's my neighborhood school. I live across the street. I live in the house that I grew up in. I went to that school. So that school has been in our neighborhood for years. And growing up in that neighborhood, we have watched y'all try to take away our voice. And tonight, it hurts me that y'all want to take away their voice. Those kids have been friends since we care daycare. That's all they know is each other. And for y'all to send them off to other schools that is almost at capacity, when they get there, they're gonna be over capacity. It lowers their education. For other kids that are not brown, or the majority are not brown, 90% of them are another race. Y'all are moving the brown kids and the black kids to better educate and separate and divide, and now they have to reap y'all benefits. I think that that is wrong, and I think that y'all should consider taking the money that y'all don't want to pay the teachers and help out this school, because not knocking y'all down, great school, but y'all should take some of that money that's just sitting there and help this school out and leave the neighborhood kids that consider Washington STEM Academy a neighborhood school alone, because now they have to take buses just as well as these kids have to take buses. So it's not just them we need to worry about. It's every child in Midland, Texas, we need to worry about. So if y'all can take that into consideration, because right now I feel like y'all already made up your mind. Y'all didn't give the community no option. We didn't have any letters, nothing. We can't even vote. And that just takes away, and it makes me feel like MISD has failed the South Side. Y'all didn't give us the opportunity to say yay or nay. Y'all basically kicked us out of our neighborhood for other kids.
Before we ask the next question, you can come on up. Before we pass on that, I do want to make one clarification. You said we could pay the teachers more. We are the highest paying district in the area of that we live in West Texas, and in some Dallas area. So we are being very proactive to take care of our teachers, because we understand that that's what's most important to our kids' education. So, and thank you, and I did not mean to say that's not your neighborhood school. I just meant it wasn't zoned that way, and I apologize for that.
Hi, I hope y'all can hear me with this mask. My name is Jaquez Anders, and I came here about 10 years ago. I came from the Dallas area, so this is a very big change, huge change for me. My children went to Washington, and I do have daughters that are that's in Carter right now. And Washington did help them to get where they are today. I just feel like, I just want to ask why, and without being controversial or seeming like I'm fighting, why do we, I can speak as a black community, why do we always have to fight for our kids to be somewhere? I cannot tell y'all the challenges I had to fight for my daughter to be in Carter because that was almost taken from her. I've had to fight. And I feel like I'm having to fight now. And I have a little one that's at Washington right now getting ready to transition to Carter. So my question is, why do we as a black community, why are all the schools being taken from us? Why do we have to fight? Why are we always looked at as the low ones? Because that's how I feel. That's what I've gotten from MISD while being here. I feel like we don't matter, because it's like, why do we constantly have to fight to be where we are? Why do we not have a voice? That's my question.
And I want to say, I definitely think that you have a voice and you matter. It's very important. I think the facility committee and the administration, when they went through this process, looked at what was the most underutilized asset that we had, a building we had in the district. The goal of this board, as long as I've been on it, has been to provide better seats to everybody. And it wasn't just to white kids, or it wasn't racial. It was based on we want better for all of our kids. And that has been a goal that we tried to work on, is making better seats available. And I truly feel like that's what we're doing. I know this is hard. We heard back in March that this board did not want to take away a school that was zoned for a neighborhood. And so you make a very good point, and I do want you to know that you are very much appreciated. We, maybe actually as a board, we're not even representing this community because I believe our district is made up of approximately 70% Hispanic. And so their voice needs to be louder about what's spoken in our district as well. So I think it all matters, and we're trying to do the very best. I think with the hiring of a new superintendent, I have been super excited because we've redone the way our service center operates now, what used to be called central office, and that we have teams, and we're trying to focus on individual needs on campuses so that it's not one campus, but it's all campuses, and where is the biggest need, and how can we get our assets over to that campus? And that it's so new, you're probably not seeing that as much, but it's something that you're going to notice. It's going to change, and I hate to see that Washington's been an F school, and been an F for 3 or 4 years now. And so I believe Mr. Galindo made mention to the fact that it's possibly of Crockett all over again. Well, at some point we might be in that opportunity that the state's going to force us to something. So just from my heart, and I would probably speak for the rest of this board, we think everybody matters. We're just trying to do the best we can out of the situation we have now, and so I hope you can appreciate that and understand that.
Yes, I understand. I appreciate this. The school, YWLA, has an oldest daughter that was accepted to the school, but she chose not to go to the school. But like I said, I just want to know what happens to my little one who's at Washington right now, who's trying to get over to Carver. So like I said, it seems like it's a fight for us. As you know, they used to be where Carver is. They used to be a black school. And it seems like when they make it something else, it's hard. Like we have to fight to get into the schools that we came up in. I cannot tell you the fight that I had. I had to go all the way to MISD. I really had to fight to get my daughter into Carver. And now my daughter, who's a straight, they're straight A students. They're straight A students. What's going to happen, and especially to my little one in Washington? What's going to happen when my little one is pushed out? Where's my little one going to go? What option do we have now? What's the education that's going to be now? Why does my child have to leave because of a mistake? I just don't want my child to suffer, and I don't want to have to fight. That's all I ask, is that y'all consider that from our points of view, and just decide what's best for the kids and not all of this,
And I think the administration was intentional about being general about another STEM academy on the south side to replace Washington. But I know those talks have already started with principals, and so it's not fair for us to get ahead of that conversation.
Okay.
But I think you will see that there will be another STEM academy that's on that side of town that's close to that school. Same way with the west side of Midland, where we see all of these extra seats and try to draw kids in. And I think that one important thing to remember as well is our district as a whole is an open district. You can apply to go to any school you want, as long as they are not maxed out of attendance. You can go to any school you select, and that's something we work on now. You mentioned Harvard, that's a little different because there's a testing requirement. Again, I know you understand that, so I don't have to explain that to you. But our campuses as a whole are open, and so if you want to go anywhere, you should have that ability to get there.
Oh yes, sir, and I agree with you. And then, the reason why I mentioned Carver is my daughter did test, and she did get into there. Her grades were good, but for some reason, I was told that her scores got lost. So that's why I'm saying I had to fight to get her scores revealed and to get in there. I just don't want to have our children to be taken from the community, the schools that are on the south side for our children, and then taken away and then pretty much booted out, and then we have a hard time getting into these schools. Have a hard time getting to Carver, a hard time getting into YWLA, because it sounds good, but to me, what is the hidden agenda here? That's all I ask y'all to consider. Yeah.
And I just would like to say that before we started talking about this, I asked for a tour. I said, I want to go see Washington. I've been in the school before for other reasons, but not as a trustee. I said, I want to look in the classrooms at the teachers and the kids that we're talking about. And I want to be specific about making that real, because these people, every single child there has their friends, has their schedule, has their family. Their parents put them there for a various number of reasons, and they've chosen that because that's what fits their family the best. that's why when I started tonight before my question, my remarks were that we are truly in a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Because I also look at our girls, not just of all colors, and I also think that they deserve this wonderful opportunity in a really special place. And I do think that, like our representative from Young Women's Network pointed out, that the proximity of where it is, hopefully, will be a huge attraction to the girls that we're trying to meet, the most underrepresented. That's female and women of color, you know? So my hope, I haven't made a decision. I really haven't. That's why we're here tonight, because like I said, I know what those kids, I have elementary age kids.
Yeah.
And it's hard to think about just being in school. But it's also hard for me to think about not giving those girls that have worked so hard a special opportunity. So thank you for your remarks and for your questions, because they're valid.
And thank you for y'all's time. Like I said, I hope the decision is made and everything goes well.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something while she's coming up?
Sure, Mr. Bishop.
If I could, please. You know, when Young Women's Leadership first was first addressed or brought to the board, we had come to a vote and come to talk about it. I was the lone one that at that time that didn't support it because of the aspect that we're in right now. Is there wasn't a plan. If the bond passed, we had a place for them to go. But if the bond didn't pass, we didn't have a place for them to go. So, and I don't blame it on the administration that we have now more so than I did in the past. But if the bond had passed, we still would have been in the same predicament we're in now, because it's going to take that long to fix SJ is what we're going to have as Young Women's Leadership. And now that the bond didn't pass, we're still in the same situation of trying to find a place to place the Young Women's Leadership Academy. So that's the things that I look at as far as, and I'm on the facilities committee where all these options were laid out to us. I know it's been some tough decisions. It's been some mind-bogglings. It's been some turns, especially for me. I've been on the board a long time, but my objective of being on the board is to see that every child gets a first shot at education. Everybody, to me, regardless of the color, every child is treated equal, because these same students we're talking about one day might be my doctor, might be my lawyer, might be my plumber, whoever that might be. But those are the things that I look at is the involvement of each student, because every student, to me, counts, regardless of where we come from, where we were raised at. I understand what the young lady was saying about the school, that across from home where she was raised. I truly understand that. I understand what you all, what I consider a neighborhood school. So I'm more often want to listen to hear what each community member, taxpayer, if you will, have to say about whether you have a child in the school district or not. Every voice to me matters. So that's why I really hadn't said a whole lot. I wanted to kind of weigh in and hear what each, I'm kind of just making notes for myself, so I can kind of go back and do a research and look over what each individual said. So I'm very appreciative of everybody's feedback, again, because y'all's voices matter. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wanda Adams Ross. I'm a native Midlander, and I'm also a proud alumni of Booker T. Washington Elementary. Given that said, this is a very emotional issue for me, and I think the Black community. And my question is, were there other campuses considered? And then I'd just like to do a little historical, if you would, for a minute, about what Black and brown people have experienced through Midland ISD. I went to segregated Booker T. Washington Elementary. All of my 6 siblings were graduates of Booker T. Washington Elementary and went on to graduate from Carver Junior Senior High School. which I'm very proud of. I'm the only one that did not get to attend, but those were our neighborhood schools. They were near and dear to the community. And as a young student growing up in Midland, 5th grade was totally segregated. And our principal was Mr. E.L. Jordan. 5th grade, we had an Anglo principal, and without any warning, it was Mr. Bob Watkins. To our pleasure, he was a good man, and he was good to us. However, when we went to 7th grade, integration was supposed to happen, but only black and brown students integrated the schools. I rode the bus, not Anglo students. Not until the 9th grade. But I, as a young person that had never been outside of my community and been around other races, I had to be strong enough to go to another school. That people didn't look like me, the teachers didn't look like me. And I tell you, the principal at the school I went to was horrible in the 7th grade. He made us feel very uncomfortable. But Mr. Dale Stuckey, and I remember him because he was our assistant principal, he loved us, he hugged us, he made us feel welcome. So when we say that these things are happening in his neighborhoods, you have to understand what black and brown people have gone through. And I can say as a student in MISD, and then also raising my children here through MISD, Carver Street did not go across north and south, across Front Street. But because Carver School was closed and Anglo students were going to have to come to Carver Center, a decision was made not on the best interest of the residents of Southeast Midland, but who you were bringing in to Southeast Midland. And that is what has happened historically in Midland, and you're doing it again. You're taking away, Carver's there, but it's Carver Center, Booker T. Washington. And I'm really proud of YWLA. It has warmed my heart as a woman and a mother of 2 students that went through the MISD, and now my grandson, but we're still struggling. And I'm kind of going back and forth, but my oldest daughter, she tried to get into Carver Center, and she was denied. I understand the young lady that said she had to fight to get her kids into schools. My daughter had the highest reading scores at Ben Milam, and not just reading logs, she also aced the California Achievement Test. And they could not give me a valid reason why she could not attend Carver Center. So that was in 1990. And we're still fighting these issues some 20-something years later. And 40+ years from when I attended school. And so when you considering taking away Washington Elementary, I still have friends that I've been friends with through the years for 50 years. A neighborhood means something. The kids should be able to go. I live right down the street from Washington Elementary. Everybody on that street was my mother and father. We were safe. These kids develop relationships when they go to school. And it should be lasting if we're doing the right things in our school. And the same way with Young Women Academy. These ladies are soaring. I see them. I see the change. I see how they walk proud. That's wonderful. They need a gym. They need to do things. And she ran a 51K? Oh my. They do need these facilities, but Washington Elementary should not be the choice. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Shirley Howard. I am one of the leaders in Midland, also a COVID intervener. We fought the fight many years ago. and we're going backwards now. Unitary status was one of the fights that Coleman interveners took leadership on. Ma'am, that is why they're saying neighborhood, it's not a neighborhood school, because they had to make a difference. And that's why some of the programs are now in the minority schools. It's because of unitary status. I'm very disappointed in some of you because we are having to go back. Many of you wasn't even here or was here but was young. Mr. Davis, you might still been part of when we was doing the fight. Mr. Fuller was, and it was a fight, and we're still fighting. You need to remember, we're no longer on the plantation. This is the city of Midland, and we should be asked, and we should be part of the decision making. Who did you all talk to? What leaders in Midland, South, and East did you all even get input up on? I'm listening. Okay, wasn't none of me. Mr. Fuller hadn't been addressed. You all talked about some of this at some of the board meetings years ago, and you was told to leave Washington alone. I don't have a problem with the leadership program. I'm a female, and I'm the president of a women's club, and I want to see everybody exceed. But let's not make a division. And you all are dividing the community at this time. We're going backwards because Washington is on the south side. We have schools on the east side. I heard P's come up. Why again? And I'm not going to go back on stuff I've heard. I agree with Matt. Thank you for what you said. The young lady over here. Why is it our schools? Why is it south and east schools? You have all these other ones out here that you can be reaching out to and making plans of parking lots or whatever. When the bond failed, you guys should have been working then as to what you were going to do next. How long is this when does this contract end? With the leadership.
Let's go answer.
She's right behind you.
So the current contract will expire in 2023, but at this time we did not elect to non-renew it, so it will be automatically extended for another 3 to 5 years.
Thank you. That is something that needs to be known to the community. And that's another problem that I see happening with MISD. I used to be a faithful attendee of the school board meetings. Due to other organization things, I'm not able to do that, so I don't really keep up. But stop hiding things from the community. As I heard you say, we all are taxpayers. We all need to be in the know. Yes, there's a representative for each district, but that don't mean everybody gets the information. And if you want to be real, be inclusive. Reach out to your leadership. Your leadership is not just the ones that you choose to talk to, because some of us have a voice. And we're loud. I'm one of those. But I will talk with you. But if you're not telling the truth, I'm going to throw you under the bus. So therefore, please, start being truthful. Start being open. Let the people know what's going on. Superintendent, don't you take them for granted. They'll get you. I just want to warn us. Because y'all say one thing, and then you do another. And I still say, before you come to a decision, you guys need to come to the community. Come to the south and east side and talk to us. Talk to those parents that have students in those schools. Were they told about this meeting today? If so, how were they? I only knew about it because I got an email, because I get 1,000 of them. But what about those that have the little children in school over there in Southeast Midland? Who told them that the meeting was going on? Mr. Brooks, thank you, because I wouldn't know about it if you wouldn't send me the email. So the rest of you, are you doing it in your community? Are you talking to the people? I know you need to come to South and East Midland before you all make a decision, because I'm looking at all of you up here. Some of you don't even live in South or East Midland. Some of you don't even know how to do the direction to even get to Washington School. So before you make a conclusive decision, remember the people that lives over there, that has to bring up their children, their grandchildren, their grandchildren. Keep them in mind. I appreciate what you're doing. I don't appreciate the way you're doing some of the things, but I appreciate you. Appreciate you because you ran for office and got elected. But that don't mean you come up here and tell us about being in the plantation what it is we're gonna do and not do. Again, thank you for what you do, but remember, God is first.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Thank you.
I do have one,
Mr. Booker has asked to speak.
okay, go ahead.
Mr. Bishop.
You good, you can say it, I don't say much. I just want the board to know, I haven't said much since we've been here, but these are the emails and the phone calls and the text messages that I've been to. So I want you guys to know that I'm the voice of District 1, and I will help District 1 fight to keep our school as a neighborhood school.
If I could say something real quick, I don't know if it's the topic, but the last three speakers have talked about history, and I'd like to just comment just a little bit. It may be relevant to your question, it may not. As far, I was not, oh, so, can you hear me? Ms. Howard, I was not on the board. I've been on the board a long time. I was not on the board when the lawsuit occurred.
I mean, you might have been born by then.
I was born then. But the one thing, and I think Ms. Howard would confirm it, is, there seems to be somewhat of a theme that the board is taking away a neighborhood school on the south or east side and giving it, open up to those from around the district to attend to. And while I was not on the board, I've done some homework about the fight and learned from reading the court papers and so forth that the reason that the Department of Justice and the interveners required that if we were going to have a dedicated GT campus, it either had to be at Carver specifically or another racially identified minority campus. So the reason why the GT program is at Carver on the east side of town, or south side of town, however you want to refer to it, it was mandated by the settlement required by the Department of Justice and by the interveners. Washington was a true neighborhood school. It was a neighborhood school in which those were zoned to attend Washington. As part of the Department of Justice settlement, as required by the Department of Justice and the interveners, they said, we don't want that to be a neighborhood school anymore. Instead, we want students from all over the district to be able to attend that campus, even knowing that that would displace the neighborhood students that were attending Washington. It would open up for the opportunity for others from around the city to have a more diverse student population at Washington. And so, and then with Crockett is a campus that was a neighborhood school that the TA indicated, we're going to shut it, you either shut it down yourself or we're going to shut it down. So we felt like we had no choice. Meanwhile, we had the 349 students going to Faskin that didn't have a neighborhood school of their own, don't have one yet, but we could make the travel less and give them a campus of their own by utilizing the Crockett facility that the TA was going to require, that we close it down, and not just close it down, but all existing students at Crockett could no longer step in those doors. They had to go to another campus, required by TA. And so it was not what we wanted to do, it's what we were forced to do. Meanwhile, yes, the 349 students were the beneficiary of that TEA mandate because then they got a campus of their own. It is my hope, and I think the board's hope, that one day, not in the too distant future, how long it's going to be, I don't know, that we'll be able to build an elementary campus in Northwest Midland so those 349 students will have a neighborhood school of their own, and Crockett can be rezoned to be a neighborhood school for those neighborhood students. I look forward to when that day comes. I'm sorry, that may not have been anything relevant, but thank you for letting me.
Okay, so
I'm glad that you mentioned some of that about Crockett, because I think this question with what to do with YWLA, which I think is a fantastic model, a fantastic idea, the way it's being implemented right now is, as someone had said earlier, the ball was dropped earlier with the bond, and now we're having to pay for that. So what I'm trying to say is that why, when Crockett was in that position, when we were in that hard place with the TEA, all those years beforehand, why were they overlooked? Why wasn't enough done? And now why is Washington so underutilized? Why? Okay,
I'll answer that question.
Okay, so I also say too, I applied, my daughter.
I can only handle it. I don't
Okay,
have
one at a time.
short
Okay,
memory,
you
but I
got it.
can
One
only
at a
handle it.
Me too, I'll practice.
I'll forget Laura.
Okay.
All right, as to Crockett, we tried in the years leading up to the inevitable mandate. We tried a variety of different things in Crockett. To say it's overlooked is not fair. We've tried different leadership, different resources, all different things. And for whatever reason, it was not successful. In fact, it's our failure to solve a lot of our, to fix perennial problems that we welcome the partnership opportunities we have with YWLA. He said, okay, your playbook is not universally acceptable everywhere. Ours is. We at YWLA have got campuses everywhere. You can utilize our playbook. And so we welcome the opportunity to partner with them because we thought, all right, we're going to have somebody with new ideas, with a new way of doing things, and we're going to have a front row seat to see how they're doing it, so that maybe we can benefit not just the students that attend YWLA, but what they do can benefit all campuses. And so that's the reason why we entered into these partnerships that we've done to try and bring fresh new ideas to try and improve MISD for all students, not just those that attend those schools.
So I wonder also with it being under capacity, because when I applied, my daughter, when she first entered kindergarten, I picked for her to do the magnet schools. But Bowie was first, she already showed inclination with art, and then Washington and Pease. We didn't get a call till school had already begun. I think it was like a month in, and we got a call from Washington that she could attend. And I was just like, school's already started. I'm not gonna pull her. She's already got a routine. She's established relationship with teacher. She's learning how to do school. I'm gonna uproot her and move her. That did not seem wise and in her best interest for us to do that. But to me, that seems like, why are they calling us so late? Is there a problem with the process on applying to our magnet schools still? Is why maybe those magnet schools have a lower capacity? I think it's worth looking at.
I can't speak to your specific question on that, but on the undercapacity question, it is a school that you apply for. And so I'm not aware of any waiting list that exists for Washington. They're at undercapacity because of not, as my understanding, not enough students have applied to go there. If there's a single student that wanted to go there that's not there, that's wrong and it's broken. Something needs to be fixed. But I'm not aware that's the reason why it's under capacity. It's because people have not elected to choose to go there to fill up its classrooms to the capacity that it could accommodate if people so chose to do so.
And let me get some clarification. Ms. McCall is standing right behind you. And will you step up and let her, maybe she can shed some light on it?
Okay, yes.
So that is correct. There is not a waiting list at this time for Washington. So we've gone through all the applicants that wanted a seat there. The reason that some people still get a call into the school year is we monitor capacity every afternoon during that first month. And so sometimes we see that we have additional seats to people who didn't apply there. So we may call them and ask them, you didn't get into another magnet, would you like to apply at this magnet? We have seats. Additionally, the whole town or the whole school district of Midland ISD is divided into 3 A, B, and C zones. We have to give equal seats to each of those A, B, and C zones. So sometimes we have a wait list in one zone and we've already filled their seats. The easiest math is 66 students, we have 3 classrooms in kindergarten, 22 for each A, B, and C. We did write into regulation this year that if there was a wait list in one zone that hadn't been, another zone had not been filled, that we could go outside of the lottery process and put those students in the other zones to help the magnet campuses reach capacity. Washington, Bowie, and Pease truly are all lottery. It's a randomly generated number assigned to the students, and it's luck of the draw if you get in. We laugh at our office. It used to be a bingo ball that we had to put everybody's name in there, and we would draw them one at a time, roll one at a time. Nope, they're not A, they're not, fill A, B, and C that way. So as for why you got a call in the month, I don't know what time you applied, because the first round of offers were sent out the Friday before spring break. So anybody who applied in round 1 either got an offer or got put on the wait list, or were ineligible for some reason or another. Second round, we sent out as soon as we had space for them. So you either got an offer or you got put on the wait list. And that's the process that happens from the second week in March all the way through this year. We took transfers and applications to magnet schools up until the second week in August. Our wait lists remain open until the last Friday in October. So if we have people on, so you could get a call up at that time because the one seat that everybody wants may have come open at that time. And if you're at the top of the wait list, you're gonna get a call no matter what time of the year it is. So that's why people get calls all year.
So let me ask one more clarification. So why is Washington, do we not have anybody else applying to it? Is that why it's under capacity now, or?
Correct.
Okay, so.
And so we try to change the regulations so that we could put any of the A, B, and C to try to get more kids in there. And we just didn't have any applicants. We also try to use it and encourage people to apply if they're zoned to another campus like Travis or Sam Houston, and perhaps those grade levels are full. We'll encourage them to apply to Pease or Washington so we can get them in. Washington also serves our ESL students. And as many ESL students as apply, Washington is supposed to accommodate them. We don't ever turn away the ESL students, and we just don't have students applying to Washington.
Thank you.
My other question and just concern is the capacity that it would push the students if there's the ones that are displaced from Washington. It looked like from the capacity chart that a bunch would be going to bunch, which is already above capacity. And I think also you have to look at other factors, not just what capacity, if it's the most underutilized campus. I think it was Henderson wasn't far from that one as well. But you also look at Econ Dis, and you also add in overcrowding. So you can't just look at just one bottom line as underutilized. What else are the factors going on in the community? What else are the factors going on in the students' lives? In proximity is huge for families that are Econ Dis. Transportation is a big deal. I know my students and my families at Kaleidoscope. Transportation is a common problem with getting to school. And so if you're close, you have a better chance of getting there than if you have to drive across town. And so I just ask you, I think it's not a good decision to choose Washington. But I just please look at all of the factors, not just that one underutilized number. And then why not raise money to either buy and renovate a different property? You know what I'm saying? What's with the foundation, like the Midland Education Foundation or other foundation or other groups coming together, if they think this is a golden opportunity, it's a beautiful opportunity for these young women, but their opportunity shouldn't be someone else's disadvantage or someone else being disregarded so that someone can have this great opportunity, this great chance. So I think there needs to be more equity in the decision, and I think choosing Washington does not give equity to the decision.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Denise Mullen, and I am a board member with the Bunch Otter Charter School Network, just for clarification. I have a question in regards to capacity, because as we have said repeatedly, Bunch is at capacity, and that's at capacity with 8 portables, okay? Not just at capacity with the building, okay? So just how soon can we redraw these lines so that that capacity is lessened, is eased somewhat? Although I couldn't point to a kid and tell you which one I wouldn't like to. Do we know what that procedure, how long it takes?
Yeah. That's what we were talking about, drawing the lines.
Yeah,
right.
drawing the lines. How long does that take and how soon can we do it?
So we have been through a demographic study, as I mentioned before, and part of that demographic study did provide the opportunity of giving us boundary options just for what you're looking at. At this particular time, we were selecting to move forward with minimal impact in the overall community. But certainly, as mentioned tonight, it is something that we can continue to look at. We will continue to look at and evaluate, because as I said in my presentation, we are in the near future going to have to make that decision. In the very near future, we have to make some decisions about some campuses that are very, as you saw, the growth is exceeding, the buildings are exceeding capacity, and they're growing at a rapid rate. So I cannot commit to a timeline tonight.
Okay. A year, a month?
Well, you
Well,
did say for next school year.
I'm the parent on the commercial. How soon
Yeah,
will
so
we board?
the earliest we would redraw boundaries would affect the next school year. And then beyond that, the next, you would look at it per school year.
Okay, thank you. My next question is in regards to the Young Women's Leadership Academy, and I have nothing against it. I've heard wonderful things. Let me put that out there first. I was disappointed to see the cultural or the ethnic dynamics were not what I had been communicated that they weren't as balanced or representative of our community as we thought they were going to be. So my question is, okay, we make a mistake, we fix it, you know, we keep shooting. How are we going to do that? Do we have some different ideas in place to try to recruit a more diversified group of kiddos? And what does that look like?
Good evening, Laura Dowdy, principal at Young Women's. Yesterday evening I got a chance to speak with Dr. Ramsey, and she talked about some of the recruitment efforts that they did in some of her previous districts, which we never really have done that in any of our Midland ISD schools. So I will say that I attribute some of our imbalance, at least in our economically disadvantaged due to COVID, and we were only allowed to do virtual recruitment. So we know what that looks like. It's not equitable and it's not accessible for all families. And so this year we will be back in every elementary school. I've already sent out to all the counselors. We'll be going in, and I like to take girls from those campuses to those campuses. So I try to take girls from Washington and South to Washington and South when we go and recruit and talk to girls and talk about our program. Really just getting the excitement of the students really helps them then to go home with this piece of paper that they're talking about Young Women's and talking to their parents. Word of mouth from our students that are already at our campus that went to those previous campuses helps as well. So those are just some of the things that we're looking to do.
Okay, my point being that my English may not be your English. When we're doing recruitment things, my husband's English is not my English. I'm married to an attorney. I don't understand half of what he says, yet we're both speaking English. So I hope that we can be really cognizant of that. My Wi-Fi may not be your Wi-Fi. When it comes to recruitment things, no matter what it is that we're doing, whether it's recruiting for Young Women's or whether it's we're informing parents of their rights for special needs students. Okay? Because I've talked to lots of parents as a teacher. I've talked to lots of parents as a parent, that they get lots of papers home, and I'm saying this to you guys, and they don't understand, even though it's in English or even though it's in Spanish, because it's not their Spanish or their English, if you understand what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I would just like to encourage you to keep thinking outside the box and keep talking to the people that you're wanting to communicate with, rather than at them. Talk to them. How can I say this in a better way so that everybody understands? How can I get this piece of paper in the hands of somebody? Okay. I have a question in regards to. Did I hear you correctly that any child can apply to attend any school in Midland?
That's correct.
Okay. So, but that's if they can get to it, correct? We don't provide transportation just because a kid wants to go to a school across town, correct? Okay. Because that makes a difference. That makes a huge difference. I watched a mom come to pick up her son from school today who had had an issue. She was just happy he'd gotten there because she hadn't gotten home from work till 1 o'clock the night before. I'm certain he walked himself to school. Okay? So, it's different. Everything's different. And, you know, we want to put things in boxes and think everything is all like we understand it, and it's not. Lastly, I just would like for you to, as a school board, pay attention, question the information, question what you think you know. You know, the kids board the bus at Bunch at 6:25 right now. The girls that go to, what was it, athletics? What did somebody marry at 6:25? 6:25. They don't have to be at school at 6:25. The bus leaves at 6:25 in the morning, okay? You know, don't assume that somebody else is taking care of it. Bunch has a fairly new building. They didn't have a school zone until this year. Somebody dropped that. Brand new building, when it was built, somebody dropped the school zone, most basic. We finally got that this year. I'm begging you, pay attention. I'm begging you to question things. I'm begging you to look at things like, this school is failing. How many of their kiddos were tested for special services? How many kids do they have in their dyslexia program? Or do their parents even know about their rights to a dyslexia program? Be considered. I'm just begging you to pay attention to the details. We all fight for children. Some days we fight for our own children because we're grown-ups. We have the power. Every adult has the power. No matter what color your skin is, you have the power. Some have more than others. But we all have the power when it comes to grown-ups and children. So we have to be doing the fighting for all children. We have to be paying attention to the details. Thank you.
Mr. Bishop, we'll come back to you.
Sir?
Mr. Bishop.
Just a quick note, before Mr. Courtney speaks, I would let everyone know, I know myself and Mr. Booker just came on the board, but once a quarter I do offer up I call a District 3 community meeting, and it's just not for District 3, so, and I try to put it out there, I do put it out on my Facebook page, and if you all want to attend, whether you live in my district or not, I'm here to be of service for all of our children, not just in District 3. So if you have some concerns, you know, it's not that I'm going to take care of them, but I am there as a listener, and I do communicate with our superintendent, which she'll deal and communicate with the rest of the board with concerns. So when I have those meetings, you're very welcome to come. I don't just, again, I don't just hold District 3. I think a few of you that don't live in District 3 have attended before, so I welcome you if you choose to attend.
How do you know that?
Ma'am?
What have on Facebook, how else do you find out that?
I'll tell you what, next one I have, I'll send you an email. Okay?
First off, let me thank the community members from the south and east sides for attending tonight's meeting. I put out the email, I put out the call, and you answered the call very effectively, and I appreciate you being here to support your school, your neighborhood school. And while technically, because I keep hearing this over on this side of the room, it's not a neighborhood school, it's not a neighborhood school. This is a school in our neighborhood. And so, yes, it is a neighborhood school to us.
Yes.
What we need to do is make sure and develop a way to bring the neighborhood back into that school. Capacity issues are a controlled item. Okay, we can control capacity. So my first question to you is, what have we done as a district to increase capacity at Washington STEM Academy?
I don't think you mean to ask that question, increase capacity. It's got more capacity than we currently utilize
Well,
there.
okay.
Why would we want to increase the capacity?
Then what increase population is the question. How do we increase population? What steps have we taken to get more kids enrolled in Washington STEM Academy?
Did the answer the principal gave earlier, was that not satisfactory to you?
No.
Not necessarily, because, so we're giving you, here's the thing.
Then you asked the question, I'm trying to clarify here. So which answer will satisfy you?
I'm asking you, what have we done to get more people to
And I asked you about the response that a person that works for the district, truthful, has given you, and which you're gonna have to ask another question for that one because.
So let me redirect my question.
Yeah.
We've said that part of the enrollment issues and why we didn't see as much diversity at WYLA is because of a lack of the ability to advertise that school and those programs. Can the same not be said for Washington STEM Academy?
So last spring, and I just got here, so Jill, you might have to help me with this, but there was a virtual, you want to talk about that a little bit? Or Elena, sorry.
So with the district moving to the Applied Midland system, which the express purpose of that is to have an equitable way for all children to access the schools of choice and opportunities, high-quality seats across the district. The district hosted a virtual school choice fair. It was virtual due to the ongoing pandemic concerns, but that was something that was widely communicated, and all schools had the opportunity to share information about the academic program they offered.
But did all people within the communities have access to internet to be a part of the virtual program?
So portable Wi-Fi hotspots and technology devices were available last year from the district for anyone who requested them.
So then the students, and those were for students to be able to access online education, but this is talking about a virtual meeting. And some parents, let's be honest, some parents have been told this laptop is just for your school's use. It's just for your students to do their classwork. And so they don't necessarily use those things for a virtual information fair. I mean, so we have to be realistic about how everyone got the information and how they find out about these Washington STEM Academy and the Peace Communication and Technology Academy as well. So we have to really, to me, we have to look at, when we're talking about underutilization and we're talking about numbers, have we really addressed every way to solve that solution before our solution is turn it over to someone else? There are opportunities, I believe, for neighborhood kids to attend a STEM, a magnet school, and it still be a magnet school. There, we see obviously that there are seats available, right? There are seats available at Washington. How about we take, and we have almost an overflow at Bunch. It's the same geographic neighborhood. Why are some of those kids not automatically, especially in K through third, where we're not really focusing on STEM and specialized education in K through third? That's kind of universal through every campus. So why are K through third graders not able to go to Washington as their home campus, and then 4 through 6 become more of the selected lottery solutions. I think that would solve your underutilization issues.
Your suggestion is to force students whose neighborhood school is Bunch and force them to go to a non-neighborhood school, Washington.
If their neighborhood, but when you look at it geographically, is their neighborhood school really Bunch? Are they not? Some of those kids are geographically closer to Washington. However, because it's not a neighborhood school, they're not allowed to go there. So technically, because of the way we've zoned and we've decided that Washington is not included in neighborhood schools, yes, they're zoned to Bunch. However, geographically, they're probably closer to Washington.
Well, I think as a principal, they're not allowed to go to Washington. They're not choosing to go to Washington.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case when we're talking about the number of students in the different pools.
Melissa, weren't you just saying that is the case, that there are just not enough children applying?
Jill can say that.
I mean, Jill, but I heard Melissa say yes, so I was just gonna say, I think that is what they're saying, is that the allotment for the, whatever, if it's A, B, or C, I don't know which one corresponds to the Washington neighborhood. B.
So is that B allotment underutilized?
So every allotment at Washington is underutilized. We have space in A, B, and C at almost every grade level at Washington. And at P's, we're almost all, but not quite.
So if you take that into account, if I'm understanding, you're saying that even the children who live in the neighborhood of Washington School are choosing not to attend that school, even though there are seats available. Is that correct?
Correct.
So they're choosing to go to their zone school of Bunch, essentially, by not applying to go to Washington.
They could be choosing to go to their zone school based on.
Or they could be
Washington,
somewhere else in
Or
the
they could be
district.
somewhere else in the
Right.
district. But if you take the neighborhood that is right on top of Washington, like Ms. Spitzer showed on her map, only 36 students from that area go to Washington.
56.
If you take, it would have to be 56 if you take more than one neighborhood code, but the neighborhood code that is right on top of Washington, that is the one right on top of it, there's 36 students.
36 students that we're talking about that live in the neighborhood of Washington, is that correct?
Yes, and we did an additional study with 3 more neighborhoods, and that is 56 students. And we just did like a cross, one above and one below, and the one in the middle. And then we even expanded it to 9, which most of our campuses only have 2 full neighborhood blocks, codes, and then parts of others. We expanded it all the way to 9, and that only gave us a little over 100 students.
So essentially, we're not necessarily only displacing our kids that live in that neighborhood. Is that a fair statement?
That's absolutely 100% correct.
We are displacing children from all over the city.
What year was the academy, not the academy, but magnet school?
2001.
2001, yeah. I wanted somebody else to clarify that, but.
Sorry, I've taught there for
So
many years.
So it's been in existence now 20 years, I believe. I ain't know public math, so for 20 years it's been in existence. So, so for people not to apply there, I mean, it's not like the school came last year during COVID, and then we did a virtual, and then we didn't give anybody in the
Yeah, so that leads me to another question then. Of those schools, of those potential students within those neighborhoods, how many actually do apply to a school, or are they by default sent to their zone school?
So nobody has to apply to their zone school, so whatever neighborhood, whatever code they're assigned to, that is their neighborhood school, so they don't have to apply to it, they automatically get into their neighborhood school.
Right, which is what I'm saying. They default to this school because that is their neighborhood school, regardless of the application process.
Well, we have that in several cases across the district. I mean, Frank's is a good one. It's not, I mean, they have lots of neighborhoods that aren't close by, and they have to travel for that. But for the most part, they have a neighborhood close to them. But some of their own schools that are neighborhood are, 10 miles away from their schools.
Right, and we talked to kind of we talked about the situation at General Frank's, how that's, I mean, none of those kids really are right there in the neighborhood because they come from 349 and so far away.
Additionally, I did mention this earlier, but it's also built in that families who have students already in a magnet program, they do get priority for their siblings to go in to the magnet program. So we feel for siblings first. So a neighborhood kid who's there can get their siblings in. And again, we looked at 36 to 56 students.
So I just want to say that I want us to maximize every opportunity to utilize that campus for the students that are in that area before we make the decision to just stop using that for all of the students in that area. Because when we, of course, several of the young ladies who are in that area will be eligible to attend YWLA, but it makes the young men, it takes them out of the picture altogether.
I do think that it should be noted that we did do the demographic study in preparation for knowing that this decision was down the pipe. I don't think that it's fair to say that consideration hasn't been given to the whole district. I mean, I for one think that the demographic study has been extremely helpful just in looking at our lens and widening it out as we look at long-range planning for everything. So I do think that the demographic study should be taken into account as a product of this discussion that started a year ago. So
numbers can't dictate every decision.
I completely agree.
And that's what we need to make sure that we
However long it's been, since 6 months or however
Hi, my name is Stephanie Smith, and I was raised on the south side of Midland, and I just want to kind of back the door to what he was saying. And as far as the population of Washington is down, and trying to find a way to fill that with the community that the school's in. I'm kind of looking at it on a kind of different way. I was, as a young kid, a gifted and talented. I was designated a gifted and talented student. My parents didn't really understand what that meant. And I understand you said Washington, you have to apply to get there, but a lot of parents in the neighborhood don't even know they have that choice. Some of them think that their children are told they have to go to the bunch because that's the school that they're zoned to. A lot of those parents in that neighborhood are working parents. They don't know really that their kids are gifted. I think that more can be done to actually fill Washington with children from the community. Teachers can be asked at the schools that these kids are zoned to identify students who test well, who grade well, and then reach out to their parents and let them know that they have an opportunity to attend the school in their community and their children qualify. Some of them don't even know. So I think that the answer is not to displace the kids in that community because it's a wonderful facility for YWLA. YWLA is a wonderful program, and they also deserve a facility that accommodates them. But so do the people that are already, the children that are already attending Washington deserve that same opportunity. They don't deserve to be displaced because they don't have the numbers or they're not meeting. Why don't we try to improve on that before we just make a bad situation worse by putting them in schools that are already overcrowded? And all of those schools don't also have the best grades. And in the demonstration tonight, we saw the demographics for the schools that were considered for YWLA, but what about all the other schools in Midland? There's a lot of schools here that weren't on that in that presentation. So there may be other schools that may meet those same qualifications or don't meet the same qualifications at Washington. They're not considered because they physically don't meet the qualifications that YWPN needs. But again, I just think that why don't we, or maybe, and I know this is a question, so I guess I should ask this. Do we reach out to those parents who may not know otherwise, that are already in their community, that they have students, they have children who qualify for a program right there in their neighborhood? Do we, just like they said, the YWLA principal said that they intend to go out to schools and let them know, hey, come, you have an opportunity to qualify. Do we do that same thing to the families on the southeast side of Midland? Do we go into those schools where their children are now attending and let them know, hey, you tell the teachers, take this home to your parent, let them know that you're an exceptional student, and you have an opportunity to go to school right down the street from your house. Do we do anything like that? I think that's where you were going with your question. There are ways for us to fill that school to capacity with the children in that community and surrounding areas instead of displacing all the ones that are already there. Okay?
I have a couple of questions. The first question would be, Mrs. Joyner, Mr. Trischetti, did he leave for the night?
Yes, he
I
had
know
to
he
leave.
had a babysitter, but
I think, me personally, that empty seat speaks volumes. I've been up since 5 a.m. I haven't seen my wife and my babies. But for somebody that's about to make a decision, and it's something this important, and making it a point to have y'all here to listen to the community, that speaks volumes. And that's my opinion. But I wanted to ask you, Mr. Murray, a question.
Mr. Galindo, Mr. Trischetti is a single parent. He does not have a wife at home to take care of his children that he's providing for. And I'm certain that Mr. Trischetti will have the benefit of watching this video before he makes any decisions. So to think that he's not there and will not get the benefit of all the speakers or questions that have been asked is unfair. I am certain that he will do his homework and listen to it and make an informed decision while he's home taking care of his child.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times the perception of certain folks is that we don't care about our children, and the fact is that there are single parents, single mothers that are having to sacrifice. And I'm glad that you recognized it with Mr. Trischetti. But as a board member, and we have this plan, to whom much is given, much is required, and I'll leave it at that. I had a question regarding your charter school, and she said that this is a nonprofit coming in, and it's not a charter school, right? But my question is, the agreement that MISD is in with Young Women's Leadership is the same agreement that Bunch is in, and the same agreement that Goddard is in, and the same agreement that Carver Center is in, the same agreement that Ben Milam is in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that would make them an in-district charter.
Yes, but that was not from their choice. None of the other schools that they had at the time were of that nature. We asked them to be an 1882 school because we also realized, as being 1882, they were subject to additional funding that the state would provide them. And I know everybody thinks that's a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, because we're paying this last year $137 million to the state to educate other kids. And so by being 1882 school, we're asking for them to send some of our money back to Midland to take care of our kids. And so you're right, that's great.
But that was it's still considered, even though you asked them to become an 1882 school, they are considered an in-district charter school.
Correct, now they
right? Okay, that's
not their model, but that's
right. That's not their model, but that's the agreement that they're in with MISD, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when we hear charter, that's part of the perception of a charter, an in-district charter that's coming in to take over or replace or come in to take over Washington, which is a neighborhood school, a school within our neighborhood. Okay, so that's just I wanted to say that out loud because we keep hearing it's not a charter, but it's the exact same as Bunch, Milam, it's the same as Carver Center, it's the same as Goddard. I mean, it's the same as every one of them. This is an in-district charter that will be taking over a neighborhood school. But in this agreement, it's the 1882 agreement.
Yes.
It's the exact same agreement. So it is, even though they were asked to be one. I just.
Can I clarify, please?
Sure.
Can you go to the podium just because it's
Recorded.
When Young Women's Preparatory Network was invited to come to Midland to open an all-girls school, 1882 was, and the charter partnership was not even on the table. Our work, we come to districts that invite us, and we bring funds, we bring resources, we bring a lot of things as part of the partnership to the district. And initially, we entered into this through a memorandum of understanding. The first thing that was established with the district that was agreed upon by the board was that we were going to open an all-girls school, and we were going to be a partner at the table. The 1882, so the school would have opened 1882 or not from the onset when the district signed that memorandum of understanding with us. And when I say that we're here for the long haul, it was never the intention to take over this facility. It was a mutual agreement that in time there would be a facility for this school to continue to take place. But we don't come to the table and invest our dollars and bring our programming and just walk away from it after a short period of time. It's not a fly-by-night. Like I said, our first school's been in operation for 20 years. We have 10 schools. We're in partnership with 10 districts, and only 2 of them are 1882 partnerships because it does allow them to avail themselves of those dollars that they're having to send back to the state. So it was an agreement on our part to help the district and to help the school because we had come to the table with an MOU prior to that to that ever happening. So Midland at that point agreed to open an all-girls school to serve the young women in this community, 1882 partnership or not. And we came to the table, 1882 partnership or not, and we're going to stay at the table. Our intent is, as long as Midland will have us, is to stay at the table with or without the 1882 partnership. And so we're committed in serving this community and serving the young women. And like I said from the very beginning, we are not a charter operator. That's something that benefited the district, and so we agreed to serve in that role.
So I guess clarification, so charter school partnership, you know, it's a legal terminology that however you want to use it or bring it up or sling it or whatever. But none of the schools that were 1882, none of them have taken anything from anybody anywhere.
No, and we're not,
So
we're not
we've
saying that they are.
as a board of trustees, we've agreed to the partnerships to bring in dollars to Midland because years ago, now 6.5 years ago, the community wanted to go to a system of grade schools. And Midland said that they wanted choice. Everybody came to the table and said, no, we want choice. So Midland ISD, Board of Trustees back then, decided that, okay, we heard the community, we had meeting after meeting after meeting, we presented the plan all over town. It was in meetings and presented the system of grade schools and how potentially that plan would unfold in the future and the timeline and as to why we were unfolding the plan. Because yes, every student counts, and yes, we need to move the bar forward for every student. And prior to that, Midland didn't have its own academic adjustment per grade. We didn't have goals. We had the goals of TA. We had the goals of whatever TA put out. But no, as a community, we just said no longer. We need to set goals, so we did that. We transparently came out and set goals. We set goals high, you know, potentially unattainable, because we want to change the behavior of every person in the MISD for each student to move them forward. So historically, you need to go back 6 or 7 years now and see all the progress and work that's been done that the community has agreed to and come to the meetings. So, you know, some of the things that have been said here tonight that we, the Board of Trustees, have not listened and not taken people into consideration, we'll go back and look at the meetings. Because the meetings are witness to the testimony from the community. And people say, because I've heard this since I've been on the board, I've been told that I am not transparent. I'm like, well, how can you tell me that when we hold a public meeting every month and we present all the data to you for the district? And I can't tell you how many records requests I've gotten, and here you go, here you go. So for people to say that there's some type of, however you want to define it, that's going on, it does not go on. As a Board of Trustees, we have presented all the information over and over monthly to our community. So the fact that we're calling this a partnership, taking over and all this business, no, there's not no takeover. The plan here that's been discussed tonight is because, yes, there was bonds sent out to the voters amendment. And it failed by 27 votes, 26 votes. Okay, so Midland saying, regroup. Unfortunately, Midland ISD does not have a bucket with a large amount of cash just sitting there that we can just go say, hey, guess what? Okay, nobody likes this idea. So guess what? We've got $25 million just sitting there. Let's just go build a building somewhere, buy up a whole bunch of land, maybe tear up a whole bunch of houses in the neighborhood, and we just start a brand new school there. You know, so somebody said something about, you know, dollars earlier. Okay, yeah. The school district has been as fundamentally truthful with you in the sense of dollars and where they go, where the federal government says they go, where the state says they go, to which child, where and in what location. I mean, we as a Board of Trustees, we just cannot go out and pull $25 million out of somewhere to bankrupt this district. And we would be irresponsible to do that. We would be irresponsible not to plan accordingly, you know, to the guidelines of the state as to how much money the district needs to have in cash in case the government of Texas decides that they're not going to fund schools, and then we bankrupt the school district.
Ms. Marquez, can I ask you something?
Yes.
Because I'm a taxpayer too. I have a home, my husband and I.
That's all I have.
That's what I'm I'm sorry, I didn't want to
Well,
boot
let Mr. Galindo finish if you don't mind, and then we'll.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, no, I don't want to boot you out. I just wanted to ask, because me as a taxpayer and stuff, I know, because we have a home here, we have a family. Because I know, you know, yes, I'm a black mother, but I am married, and I do have a family. I am somebody that matters. I'm not on government funding. I care about my life. So just to get that straight. But what about, what I want to ask real quick to you is, well, why is it always the black community, South Side schools that are looked at? Why can't you look at anybody else's schools? And can somebody please tell me the percentage of black people in YWLA right now? Because y'all say that it's mostly for us and the minorities. What's the percentage of the black people right now in YWLA?
Can you pull that slide up?
Nick, can you pull that demographic slide back up?
Yeah, yeah.
Before map.
Maybe not.
7.1. So that's not a lot. Percentage
It's
of
African American.
Yeah, so let's not hold up, and what I'm going to say is this really, looking at this percentage, is it really gonna be for us? My thing is, I understand, I want these girls to succeed, I had a great education, I'm a nurse, I had a great education. My thing is, don't continue to take our schools. Why isn't, I'm sorry I have to say it like this, because I'm not racist or anything, but why isn't the white community school looked at? Why isn't anybody else's school looked at? Why is it just the South Side schools? Because they have big schools too. Why do we have to always get moved out? Why do we always have to get booted? And like I said, I'm a taxpayer too, my money matters, but that's not a big percentage to me. And then if they go over there, who's to say that percentage won't go down? Who's to say that every black child will get in, every Hispanic child will get in? I'm worried that from seeing what happened in Carver, because I have children that are in Carver, I don't see a lot of us in there. And I'm worried that that'll happen. Once y'all boot the school out, I'm worried that might possibly happen. Because I feel like even when I walk through there, I'm looked at as, what are you doing here? Well, you know what? My child earned her spot to be in that place.
I wanted to answer one of the questions about if they would even get in.
Yeah.
That was a question I had when I first joined the board, and Dr. Seibert was the principal. We met, and I said, how do we prioritize who gets in and haves and have-nots?
Yeah.
And she said currently, and the administration will be able to speak to this better because I am not the expert.
Yeah.
But my understanding of it is that at this point, we are fortunate enough that we have been able to extend an offer to any child who has applied to Young Women's Leadership that has gone through the full application process.
Yeah, the process.
And if they were to be able to expand into a larger facility, indeed, that would hopefully remain, correct me if I'm wrong, a goal for the school. So the capacity issue in terms of women of color wanting to be in the school and not being able to get in, I do not think, hopefully, would be an issue, unless you guys.
That's what I'm hoping, because
Yes,
they say that, but it's hard.
I agree, and it is actually the mission of Young Women's Leadership Academy to make that a priority and to make sure that that happens. So, I
just
mean,
sort of make sure we understand this too, because this is the district is 7% African American. YWLA right now is just on those 7%.
reflects the district.
Now Washington is 10%, so it's a little higher. But,
Yeah.
but the YWLA really is a true picture of what our district is. It's pretty close. And again, here's the part that should concern us all. And that's the part that they talk about, being able to go out and recruit and make sure that they're getting in these schools. And like Mr. Ratliff said, we ought to be trying to recruit to our schools, whether it's Washington or wherever. And I just think, to be fair to Ms. Spencer, she didn't just single out Washington. She looked at Jones, and then she just kind of went all the way around and kind of eliminated schools as they didn't fit. And she kind of, those were kind of the things in red that showed you this kind of pushes that out. There's not, school's not big enough, the classrooms aren't big enough.
Doesn't have enough land area.
Right, so.
It's just, and I hear what y'all saying, but it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see. You know, Carver used to be a black community school. They got taken from us. Now we have Washington, and that hurts my heart. Because if I drive by there and see YWLA, my heart's gonna, I'm gonna always see that was taken from my child, my children, because Washington succeeded. I was there, my daughter who's in junior high went there. I knew the coach that came up and taught. She taught my daughter. Washington has not always, I want everybody to know, has not always been low. It was hard to get into. I chose that school for a reason. They prepared my child, you know, and my children to get into Carver. They had excellent teachers. When the teachers started leaving because they wasn't paying good, and when things declined, that's when things went downhill. And then I had friends that were trying to get into Washington that couldn't. But let's tell the truth of why Washington went down. It's not because every student failed. It's because a lot of the teachers left during that time. I can testify to that, because my daughters were there before that. We were losing teachers left and right. So my thing is, don't just say it's because the students are disadvantaged, because it's a whole lot more.
Somebody will have to clarify this for me, because I don't know the exact year.
Yeah.
But those teachers in Washington make the same as a teacher at Faskin or Jones. Or
Yeah, it was years ago.
But what happened, and I think what you're talking about is the funding the magnet programs went away. And that's when we couldn't pay stipends and we couldn't,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the,
that's what
for the
happened.
extra
Good
hours.
clarification.
For those teachers were staying extra time and they were getting paid for it. Well, that went away, and so then it's either volunteer or you do away with programs. And so I totally understand what you're saying, because the teachers did, their pay went down because they weren't getting the stipends anymore.
Yeah, and it made our students, you know, start to decline, start to fail. But I just want people to know that school has not been a bad school, because it helped my children to get to Carver. It's a great, and my little one that's there now is succeeding as a straight A student. I don't want that to be taken from my little one, and then I'm just booted to another school, overcrowded school, and hoping that my child can still succeed. That's all I'm saying.
Can someone on the board clarify the funding part? Was it 2012, the federal government funding back to school?
What were you gonna ask?
We're gonna ask, so getting back to Mr. Galindo, thank you for your patience. On the charter distinction, I mean, I think I may be misspeaking, but I think you're saying, well, it's right to call it charter, we're arguing about the charter. Let me give you my comments on it. As has been, for lots of reasons, people have different connotations with the word charter. Some people like it, some people really don't like it. With respect to our campuses, our 1882 campuses, I think it's inaccurate to call all the 1882 campuses charters. It's oftentimes done, and understandably so, but I think IDEA would be an example of an in-district charter. YWLA would not be an example of an in-district charter, for the reasons that we've explained tonight, that they, so anyway, I don't think your point so much is semantics, but I would love for this community not to call all the 1882 schools in-district charters, because I think it's inaccurate. I would prefer, if they want to call IDEA in-district charter, that would be appropriate.
And I think the reason why I asked that is because that's what folks have been asking. This is a charter school coming in. So when you look at the agreement, it's the exact same agreement with IDEA, which is a charter. So it makes it seem as if it is a charter. We can call it a partnership. I know that's what we'd like to call it in the past, a partnership, so we can get away from the word charter. But it's the exact same agreement as IDEA. And so that's why folks are asking, are you bringing charters in to replace these schools? And that's where the concern's coming from. Is that what's happening? Are we going to continue this? But it's because it's the exact same agreement as.
Let me
and this is,
well, by the same token, real quick, by the same token, if YWLA, who was first, was not a charter, and they have the same contract as IDEA, which is an in-district charter, I don't know why people don't call them all partnerships. I don't know why, because one is a district charter and most are not. They call them that, but
yeah. But it wasn't it was just trying to figure out, because the agreement that they have is the same as everyone else, and you have charters coming in and they're partnerships, and you call them that. The thing is that these schools that are partnerships have their own boards, right? And they are in charge of their own curriculum. It's different. It's different than what the other schools in MISD are doing, right?
Intentionally, yes.
Yeah, so that's what it is. The other question was, now if we start just accepting anyone into the Young Women's Leadership, does that take away from the model that they've built already? Because, and I say that because there are qualifications that should be met for these young ladies to get in. One of them was maintaining an 80 average, or one of them, I guess the other one was an interview, an essay, and then also meeting the standard on reading and math. Are we just going to, if that's the case, just let anyone in? And does that still, what does that do for the young women that worked to get into the program? And all of a sudden now just anyone can come in. What if they don't meet those expectations, or they can't meet those expectations? Is it still going to be the same system and the same program that it was before we changed anything? And I just ask because there are qualifications to get into here.
Yeah, yes.
So not every young lady is going to qualify for that.
Fortunately, I mean, Dr. Seibert, or Principal Dad is still here. My understanding is that we've been fortunate in the fact that all of the girls that have completed the application process, we haven't had to turn anyone
There are
away from.
very few girls
criteria.
that complete the process that
Right.
do not get in. So we are a college prep academic. We do teach our classes at pre-AP levels. There are some services that we do not provide at YWLA, like co-teach and resource. So things like that we do not provide. We have over 25 students on 504s. We do have some students on IEPs. We have, I feel like our ESL population is 20, we have like 22 to 24 students that are ESL. Our students they document speaking 9 different languages at home. We have students from 23 of the elementary campuses that attend our schools. So I feel like besides our economically disadvantaged, we are a pretty fair reflection of the demographics of the district and of the community. Besides that economically disadvantaged, so we're working really hard, we're working really hard on that, but just to go back to the question, very few girls that actually complete the application process, and we do, like my registrar and myself, we contact those parents, we email back, like we haven't received the essay, can we come to the elementary, can you pony it over to us? If you don't know what that is, it's like the little mail system from school to school that we don't put a stamp on and somebody comes and picks it up. Can we pony the essay? So we really do the part on our end to get those things, to get the application completed, so.
But we're saying, we're gonna extend the offer to everyone, but not everyone's gonna get accepted though. That's, but if they don't, but I'm just saying, if they don't meet the requirements that are required now or before this point, for these young ladies to get in, there was a requirement that they had to meet. And so what I'm asking is, are we just going to accept all of them, even if they do not
You're
meet
saying
that
from
requirement?
Washington?
From Washington.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was confused, I thought you were talking about the whole district.
No, from Washington.
So you're saying, are
It
we?
would say that we're gonna accept anyone that wants to come, even if they do not meet that expectation or meet those requirements. Are they still allowed to come in, or do they still have to meet those requirements? Because that kind of changes things.
We currently have a lot of programs in MISD that have requirements.
Yes.
If you don't meet the requirement, you can't be in the program.
Yeah, but no, but what I'm saying in this situation was
Specifically
specifically
to
Washington,
this
in this
situation.
unique situation, those young ladies that are at Washington, if they do not meet that criteria, are they allowed to just join the program?
Dr.
Or will
Graham,
they be turned away?
That's just a discussion that hasn't occurred.
Okay.
We haven't.
And I just say that just because before we say that we're gonna accept anyone that comes in, we have to make sure that we understand that there
I'm
are
not
still
sure.
requirements.
Did you hear someone say that everyone was going to be accepted in?
I thought that's what,
No,
we said priority.
priority, okay.
So if
So,
they applied. and
if they applied, then they would, if they met it though.
What I said earlier was that fortunately so far, the application process has been rigorous in a good way, but we've not had to turn down many people that have applied district-wide, is my understanding of young women. So thus far, but you're talking about specifically Washington girls that would like to go to Young Women's. And I think that that's a valid question. I just don't think we've gotten that far down the road.
I just have 2 questions I talk about young women. Will there be another meeting at Washington on the east and south side, but like this?
Yes,
Okay.
so that's why I got to talk to Dr. Ramsey and Mr. Brooker a while ago. There will be another community meeting next Monday, next Tuesday the 7th at Washington, 5:30 to 7.
And then, so with this, we have this today, the meeting next week, the decision should be voted, or this should be voted on December 13th at the next school board meeting, is it right? That's it,
We
plan?
would look to have it on the agenda for December, but the final date we have to have a decision is January or February? January. We have to make decisions because we can't get Young Women's Leadership, the science labs, if they're staying here or the portables here, and we've got to get the process ready if we're going to a different school. So
I just want to make sure
absolutely,
that we have at least one more chance for the community to come back out and then have it where they're at.
And I want to address, before you sit down, I want to address 2 things you said. Because you asked,
are we having more schools come in that are gonna be this way? And the answer for now is no, because we had called for quality, back, I think it was September, October, it was presented to the board, that we had 2 schools apply and nobody was passed forward. So for this following year, no more, 18, or charter schools, or schools of choice, I should say, that's the right word. Schools of choice will be coming into MISD.
There you go.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I've been suffering with a huge headache all day, so I'm trying to help you with that. But, so that's not happening next year. They didn't pass for certain reasons. Those people that applied know the reasons, and they will continue to work on that. The other thing I want to address to you, because, and Mr. Davis spoke about it, is the term charter school, because we all have our opinion of what charter school means, and a lot of it has a negative connotation. So let me address that. At MISD, we took the approach. I was a brand new board member, didn't know anything about system of grade schools, but what we approached was choice schools, so people could go. And my opinion was to build leadership in buildings so that your teachers benefited, your kids benefited. Okay, so that's my opinion of system of grade schools. Well, then we start talking about charters and coming in. So, well, let's talk about it. Charter school has a bad connotation because there are certain things that I equate, in my opinion, to a charter school. Selective criteria for who gets in. I don't want to deal with discipline issues, so let's send those kids to another school. No, that's not right. The third one is special needs. Are you going to address special needs? Are you going to address English language learners? And so those are real concerns for me when we talk about charters. When we were at conference back in September, Dr. Ramsey and Mr. Pounds, we sat down with our State Board of Education rep, and he said, tell us about what you want. What's different? How do I represent you? And I said, okay, our state representative, our legislature in Texas wants charter schools. That's not controlled here, that's controlled there. And that's why the 1882 schools came alive, because our Commissioner of Education felt pressure, because that's what the legislature's saying, is go make this happen. So it's kind of trying to be a best of both worlds. It's not a charter school, but you do have that kind of feeling to it. I told him, we want what's best for kids. If it's charter schools coming into Midland, let's do it, because we want what's best for all the kids. But if you're going to fund them equally, then you make sure that you are holding them to the same criteria. Because myself, on this board and as several public education, I don't want an all-white school over there scoring all A's, and then you come in over here and telling me, well, we're better than you because look, we got an A and you got an F. That's not true, because you didn't take the same kids. And I'm getting on a soapbox, but this is what I expressed in the State Board of Education rep, is make it comparable. Those charter schools need to take all kids. And if they do, then let's fund them equally. But right now, in my mind, we have an unfair quality when we talk about charter schools, is because they get money for students, just like we do, so we give them the equal money, the same equality all across MISD, but then the state comes on and gives them more money, and that's not right. That's not equality, and that's not fair, and our state legislature is the one responsible for that, and I'm telling this whole room and anybody listening online, if you don't take your state Senate race as important, you're missing the boat, and I'm saying it right now, because you better know we are losing a state senator that was been high on public education. And I don't know what our the 4 gentlemen that are signed up to run, but you better be looking for that question, because it makes a difference. If we lose another person that's not for public education, it's going to be hard for all of us. And so that is something we all need to be standing up, paying attention, asking the right questions about where are we going and what are your concerns about public education. And we definitely want someone to represent oil and gas. But public education for all kids equally and equitable is what we're looking for.
And the last thing I'd say is, everybody's here because they care about children. Everybody's passionate about what they want, and because of their certain situation. At the end of it, it's not the folks that are on the east and south side against YWLA. What it is this was bad decision making. It's just a bad situation. But let's not make it a point to where we're against people. The board has done it in the past and divided the community. You know, I don't want it to be this again. Everybody cares about their kids. The only thing, you know, when we talk about choice schools, that good, is that I elected a representative from my community to take care of my tax dollars and my children, and the children within our community. When you bring in these choice schools, these are different boards, and the person that I elected does not have a say in curriculum, doesn't have a say in what happens in there. All they have to do is take care of the maintenance part of it, providing a building, taking care of the food, taking care of that. That's what concerns us, is with them coming into our area, do we even really have a say? Because that's my voice. And can he still have a voice? And will he still have a voice in representing me, my family, my children, and when it comes to things like that? But that's the concern with choice schools that are coming in. And
I 100% agree with you, and I appreciate Ms. Small being here tonight and representing a board that's an active member of the community and expressing opinions, and you're 100% correct. And I don't think anybody in this board, when we said 1882 schools, wanted to give up that power to an outside board. But we have to play the game, because we don't make the rules, we just have to play the game. And that's literally how that all comes down to. I 100% agree with you. So, hi Kiki, how are you?
Pretty good. I'm Kiki Marion Stramberg. And I'm here just because I'm in District 1. And Washington is part of our district. And so my question to you guys is, we purchased a golf course that's right outside my house. I mean, I can literally look right outside and see the golf course. That's MISD owns that golf course. Okay, so why is it that the young ladies, the school can't be there? Because we already own that land and we're looking for space for them to be able to grow. Why can't we place our school there? And that way we won't be taking any, kids from their school or displacing them anywhere. We can just use what we already have. It's already out.
So I think that question was kind of posed earlier, and the reason I would say is, for one, there's two reasons in my mind. One, that is the 100 acres is meant, it's the perfect size for a 6A high school by regulation, what's required for the state. But let's throw it over to the area that was bought for lease legacy over by Grundy. That plot of land is big enough for a high school and a middle school. It's bigger and it's more resources. Okay, so now we're over here and everything makes sense. It costs $25 million to go build this facility. And right now, we just don't have the funding to go do that and say, we've got these resources, we can go do it. We do have some resources, but not $25 million worth to go make that happen. And that's part of the reason why we get here tonight, because the whole thought process is when we started this incubator campus that YWLA's called home for 3 years, is it was cost this much this year, it's going to cost this much next year, it's going to cost this much the next year. Well, that number has grown astronomically. And so we went from having money in our 1882 system of great schools budget to cover leases to now we're talking concrete, electricity, all the different things. And I would tell you, if we finish this whole process, and I don't know the exact number, I'm just going to ballpark it, we're talking $12 million. And so we've almost built a school here of portable buildings. And so in our mind at the time, the thought was, well, we'll get, at that time it was the bond, but when the bond passes, we're going to use this as the incubation site for so many years, and then by the time we're outgrowing this and ready to go to SJ, that happens, and then this site becomes another incubator
for a different idea.
Okay, so that was the plan.
Yes.
And so since the plan doesn't work, we say, hey, let's go to District 1 where they already have the, I don't want choice schools. And when you say choice, I like to say that it's not a choice when you have to go downtown and put your name in a lottery to be picked. You know, I have a problem with you saying choice because that's not a choice. That's a choice for whoever's picking that name. You know, and even if you're in, I live in this district, so I have kids that miss the bus because they're right across the street from Pease, but they are bused to Santa Rita because they didn't get into the pick. They didn't get into the drawing to be able to go to their neighborhood school. Now, this is not affecting anybody else on the north side, west side. This is affecting my district. So when little Johnny can't get to school because his mom is at work and he's already went in to school and he missed the bus, darn it, his school's across town. Okay, so I'm saying that the reason why we have 49%, how many of those are neighborhood kids that attend? I mean, on all of District 1 schools. How many neighborhood kids get to attend their neighborhood school? We don't have any. Because we have to go through a drawing, just like they have to do for the young women. They have to meet a criteria. And our kids, even if they live across the street, they don't meet that criteria. So they have to be bused across town. That's not right. Okay, we say that the grades are low. Okay, is that from the neighborhood kids? Because we don't attend that school. We're bused out to Santa Rita. We're bused out to all different places. So when you say choice, it's not a choice. We have to do what it is that we have to do to get our kids into the lottery pick and pray that we make it because we live across the street and I got to go to work at 7 and he has to be in school at 8. You know, that's the problem that I'm facing. If you could give us 50% of our schools in our neighborhood to attend that school, then I guarantee you we have pretty much a better conversation. But right now, I don't feel like we're being treated fairly because we don't even get to attend our schools. We don't. I mean, we don't get to go outside of our doors and walk across the street to Pease Elementary. We don't get to walk across to Carver. We don't get to walk across to Washington. We don't. And that's not fair. And you want to say, hey, look, we're at 49% capacity. We only have 49%. Okay, well, give us 50% of our kids that can walk across the street and go to school. I guarantee you then we would probably have the 100% because my math is not that good, but 50 plus 49 is 99. You know, that's the difference, you know. And so we're sitting here, we're not upset, but we're saying, why is our district? Because we don't show up? Is that what you're saying? Well, we're here now. And our community does not want the women's school there, the young ladies' school there. We want to continue to keep on striving to build our community. We want our kids to first be able to attend the neighborhood school because they don't have that problem out there at all the Great House and Yarborough. They don't have that problem. They can walk right across the street to their school and attend. We can't do that. So let's work on the things first before we try to outsource our school. Let's work on getting our kids into the school first. And then we can outsource. We can talk about it. But right now, it's not up for negotiation because our community is saying no. We're saying no.
I have a question. So if I'm hearing you right, would you prefer that there not be a magnet? Like, you would rather Peace be just a neighborhood school, no magnet, their seats be reserved?
No, that's exactly not what I'm saying. What I'm saying right now, we want 50% of our kids. It can stay a magnet school because we need the technology and stuff too. What I'm saying is we have technology right there at the school, but our kids can't attend. Everybody else's kids can come and attend, you know, but when we put our kids in to do the lottery pick, you know, hey, little Johnny, go right across the street to school. No, you catch that bus and you go all the way out to Santa Rita. But there's a technology school right there across the street. So yeah, we want to keep the STEM program, but allow 50% of our kids to go.
Can I ask you a question? To clarify something about the schools. So are you saying you're in a disagreement with the 2001 settlement or 2002 settlement to put the magnet schools on the east side of Memphis?
No, Robert, what I'm saying is that our neighborhood kids, they're not able to attend that Pease Elementary, that magnet school. They're not able to attend that Washington magnet school. We're not there anyway. So then you're saying, hey, we're at 49%. And that's what I'm telling you. We're at 49 because we don't allow 50. I'm asking for 50% of the neighborhood kids, the kids that live in that neighborhood, to go to that school. Then you can lottery pick and everything you want to.
I've got you now,
Yeah,
I'm
thank you
sorry.
so much,
I
thank you so
apologize,
much.
I was
Yes,
not
ma'am.
tracking.
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
So, just to kind of clarify, because that was the agreement from the interveners and the judge back then, and to get the unitary status, right? And I, for one, back then, voiced my opinion and said, no, I don't want, I said, I don't want the magnet school on the east side.
Oh.
I said that back then, because I didn't want to displace the kids from the east side. I said, let's do it equally. One on the north side and one on the east side.
Well,
Magnet school, because it was gonna be, because.
We got two of them in our district right now.
I know, because it was gonna be a lottery. And so we're gonna have a displacement and displacement. 50-50, like you said.
That's right, that's what we want, that's all I'm asking for.
And I'm just bringing this up because I was involved in 1999, 98. But I said back then to the people that came from the north side, the east side, they said, hey, I don't believe in accepting that proposal. I said, displacement and displacement. Because in the future, we're gonna run into issues.
That's right.
But you know what?
Thank you for standing up for that.
And I said,
But Robert, you were outvoted by the other plaintiffs and interveners.
yes, so that's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
So,
did not sign that agreement because of what's happening right now.
okay, well.
So let's get it straight.
Well, I thank you, and now that I know that we can look forward to giving you a vote on the 50-50, okay? That's what I want. I want 50-50. So, you said it yourself, you did it, what, 9 years ago? 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Let's do it again now. That's what we're asking, yeah, that's what we're asking for. That's all I'm asking for is 50%. Once we can do that, then we can talk about anything else that y'all want to.
Let our kids go to our schools.
That's right.
And then the schools will be filled.
That's right, that's right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Thank you for coming up.
I apologize, you've been waiting a long time.
I have. I just have some clarification questions for you. Having Washington turn back into a neighborhood school is not even on the table. That's not even an option at this point. Is that correct? Like, we're not changing it from a magnet school back to a neighborhood school, right?
I don't think there's a discussion.
Okay. And they're currently underperforming and they have a failing performance grade, is that correct?
The last time a grade was given.
Okay. So bringing YWLA and the Young Women's Preparatory Network with a proven track record to further the education of not only women, but women of color into that community opens up a positive opportunity for the women in that community to be part of a program with a proven track record. Is that my understanding? Am I getting all of that correct? And transferring YWLA into Washington campus is the most financially responsible way to allow this program to continue to give those women that opportunity also? Is that correct?
With the information that we've gathered.
Okay, thank you very much for the board. I really appreciate your study. It opened a huge avenue for them to continue on with their program and advance the women in Midland, and I really appreciate the work that you guys have put into this. Have a good night.
I have a question for the board, and it might be an assignment, I don't know. I've heard all of the expressions and concerns about this process and in the direction that you're going. Before the next meeting, I want you to bring to the table concrete suggestions for addressing systemic issues that create the kind of scenarios that's been presented on the part of these people who spoke. Systemic, I mean, we've been dancing around the real problem. Systemic racism, systemic discrimination when it comes to education. They exist in MISD. I've got a grandson that's pretty brilliant, I think. And he experienced the same thing your child did, trying to get into the Carter Center. You know what he said? And it's bad PR in MISD. They don't want me, I don't care, I'll go and choose somewhere else. I want you to deal with that issue. Because it exists in this community, and in particularly is it hurting children. And we can continue to dance around it, or we can meet it head on. What I've heard this evening is an affirmation of the principle of invisibility as it relates to institutions. They don't see many of our kids in their classroom. They don't see many of our parents who are actually involved. The assumption is they are not. It's not the case. So, board, do your homework for me and come to the table with some solid recommendations on how we are going to address systemic institutional issues in this district. Thank you.
Mike decided he's tired. So if we don't have anybody else to come up to ask questions tonight? Okay.
I live on the east side of town, and my son attends a magnet program. And so when we first moved to Midland, everybody said, if you care about your kid's education, do not put them in public school. Friends, family, everybody. Go to Highlander, go to Trinity, all the schools. I was like, well, why? Okay, if you're going to go to public school, don't pick one on the east side and the south side. So I think, Mr. Fuller, that's what he's really talking about, is when will the board be able to have a solution for our kids on the east side and the south side? Yes, Washington is low enrollment, because do you want to send your kids to an F-rated campus? Would you? Pease is the same way. A lot of parents don't have a choice. They don't have transportation. So what I'm asking is, yes, I love YWLA. I know girls that go there. It's great, but the priority needs to be our other kids as well. And I ask you to let your superintendent who's hired help you in a plan to make that happen. So if you're going to take Washington, it's not going to go over well. You already see that. Wait till you get to Washington next week. It's going to be the same thing, and it's not that anybody is against YWLA. It's that Washington needs help. Don't kick the kids out. Help them. Help the teachers. That should be something as a board that I'm asking you to think about, and how you can do that. How can you help Pease? How can you help De Zavala? How can you help South? How can you help our school? Can you help our schools? Maybe that's the question. Can you?
We can.
How do you do that?
We have a new plan, and I believe that starting with our superintendent, which you call on, has already changed the way we're looking at education and the way the team, Dr. Cuellar is back in the back, and the team that she's established that are no longer employees at downtown that don't see kids, but they're people that are going to get onto campuses and help teachers. And of course, we've got resources. I've said that. We've got to put those resources where it makes the biggest difference. Luckily, right now, because of COVID, we have additional federal funds called, they're called ESSER funds, but it's funds to help and attack issues. And so I have full faith that we have hired a superintendent that is going to attack those issues that we put, I saw when I got on the board. we tried a different plan, and that's the thing about this board, is we try to do some different things and not keep doing the same old things. And I 100% agree with you. We need to train the principals that are in buildings on the east side and south side to the very best of our ability. We need to have the top people there. We need to put assets in there so that they've got aides helping break down classes. We need to do all of those things. I'm a firm believer that our superintendent, our team will make those adjustments and get us moving in the right direction.
And just to tack on to that, I've also heard Dr. Ramsey from the very beginning, literally the day we met her. She said the budget has to reflect the priority. And I believe that the money that she and her team are going to allocate our resources financially to reflect the help that all of our campuses need, but especially our south and east campuses. And I think that up until this point, that hasn't necessarily been the priority. I don't know, I'm new to the board, but in my experience, since joining Dr. Ramsey, the budget has not necessarily aligned with what the priorities were of the district, and I think that's changing in terms of financial dollars chasing effect.
Anyone else for east side, south side? Plans, goals, things you think we could do differently?
I can tell you this, so there's not a presumption as to potentially how we function, you know, but the Board of Trustees is not an ask and a want type deal on a daily basis. So the Board of Trustees comes together and makes decisions presented by the administration as we move forward. So it's not a, it's not a ship that we turn around with 26,000 kids every day and send in another direction. So just so you'll know that the collaboration happens here, we listen to the community, and then we try to make the best decision from what's been presented. So, me as the Board of Trustees can go to every school and interview every teacher. I'm not the expert in the subject matter. So, I can give you my plan is in it, but it's not the Board of Trustees plan. So effectively, the educators are responsible for educating the children. So we're responsible to hearing the needs and wants and trying to come up with that plan that says, okay, yes, this is what we'll support. But there's not an individual person for myself, per se, to go and interview somebody and say, yeah, I think the way you divided this math problem and presented it is not according to the cognitive perception of this child, and that's why they didn't get it. They need a pictorial presentation versus a numerical presentation. No, that's not at the level we need to attend the school district. But I say that because there is some confusion on a regular basis as to what a trustee should do and not do. So,
and I understand that. I'm just saying, yes, and I understand that. And I'm just saying to utilize the superintendent that you hired and her staff to help fix this problem that we've had for a while since I've been here. And if Pease is going to turn into neighborhood, is Bowie going to turn into neighborhood? Can someone answer that question?
Pease is not.
If we close one magnet, is there a possibility to close 2 more magnets? To end the magnet system and go to neighborhood? Would Bowie be a part of that discussion?
Not the closing of Peace and Dewey are not being discussed by anyone.
Okay, I just was asking.
That I'm aware of.
But that's the door that you open, right? Like you're gonna close one magnet, so now when we go to apply, is that something that parents might think, like, could this happen again? And I think just reassuring parents and to know that when we go to apply Midland, are we gonna get
Thank you.
Any others? I just want to clarify or add on, when, I have conversations with Dr. Ramsey almost daily, enough where she doesn't even bother me most days. but she has a heart for these kids. She has a heart for our principals and for our teachers in a way that we've not seen, I've not seen since I've been on the board. The way we've opened communication, let principals express their needs, their opinions. Same way with teachers, walking into the school building, hugging on our kids, loving those kids, and sharing with them. We have conversations all the time. How do we train our teachers better? How do we train our principals better to be great leaders on campuses and let them grow? And that's something, in my opinion, we've missed, that we've not done. And I just feel like she's the right person, and I think we're heading in the right direction. Again, she started right after Snowmageddon this past year, this year. It seems like it was a long time ago. So this year, so she's tackling those problems, and I expect to see changes. And as a board, that, addressing your question, that's what we do with her. We've given her the reins to move and take her plan into action. We just hold her accountable. Same way we hold her accountable with what happens at Rusk or Goddard or SJ or Alamo or Abel, all of those schools, the same thing. We hold these other boards accountable for what they're doing at the Goddard, at the Carvers, at the Reaches, the Ben Milan International Academy. All of those things, those boards don't report to us, but they have models. They're still part of their contract says they will apply and meet the MISD standards. And we raise those standards. Mr. Marquez made mention of that earlier, that when he got on the board 2 months before me because he didn't have an appointment, so he was sworn in. But when we got on the board, there was a whole time 12 to 15 goals, and we simpled that down to 3, and now we have 4. And someone mentioned earlier, well, you haven't been out in the community talking, and you're absolutely right. And every quarter we evaluate ourselves for what we've done, and every quarter we take a big hit because we've not been out in the community. And I know it's an excuse, but COVID has kept us all off our game, because not only are we supposed to be out in the community on representing both feeder systems, but we're supposed to be engaging with students and getting their input about what do we do to make your education better for you. And she's done a great job. I don't know if many of you saw the State of Education held by the Chamber a couple weeks ago, but we had 2 really great students get up there, and I don't know how she selected them, but I mean, really just get up there and express their own opinions about what they wanted and what they think needs to be better. Well, she has all these advisory committees. She has a community advisory committee, she has student advisory committee, parent advisory committee, and then a business teacher advisory committee. So she's doing all that. She's trying to listen to hear what the needs are. And so I really appreciate the fact that all of you showed up tonight and expressed your opinions, because what it makes me think is we've got to empower our principals to be able to go out and recruit these kids, just like YWLA is doing. We need to have those principals going out and say, man, I need you. We've got a good spot for you, and we're going to teach you. So this has been a really good meeting for me, a good enlightening meeting, and I thank you for all of y'all for coming and spending, I don't know what time it is, 3.5 hours with us tonight. But the time is now 9:02, and we will adjourn. And I will remind you, 5:30 to 7 next Tuesday at Washington, and that will be hosted by Mr. Booker and Dr. Ramsey. The whole board probably won't be there because it won't be a scheduled meeting, but I think we can come and attend in that fashion. So thank you.